I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. I'd like to welcome you all here tonight. I'd like to ask Commissioner Harden if he'll open us up with a pledge and invocation.
Let us pray. Thank you, Lord, for this day, and thank you, Lord, for this season we are in, Lord, and thank you for all the many ways that you bless us and watch over us. And I pray, Lord, for your blessing and guidance throughout the meeting tonight, and as we handle each issue, Lord, that we should do it diligently and civilly, Lord, in the best interest of our community. And these things I ask in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty. If you would like to speak on an individual agenda item, please fill out a speaker card with Paige. Additionally, we have two opportunities to speak for citizens to be heard, one at the beginning or one at the end of the meeting. And do we have any changes to the agenda?
Yes, we have an add-on item, the select members for the Wakulla Animal Control Appeals. That'll be under general business, please.
Okay.
Appeals Board.
You want to add that to the end of general?
Yep.
Okay.
I'd like to recognize Representative Graham's aide over here on your left.
Welcome back.
Thanks, sir.
Glad to see you again.
And I can pull an item, but we wait till the consent on that.
No.
No, do that now.
I want to pull 14.
15. Any other changes?
Yeah, I'd like to pull 8, 11, and 12.
8, 11, and 12. Any others? Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. We have one citizen to be heard, Miss Dana Peck.
Goodness.
Dana Peck, 2481 Surf Road. Thank you. I'm here in a state of distress. On March the 23rd, about 3 weeks ago, all of you very admirably voted 5-0 to be against the bill going through the legislature to put on the ballot in Panacea the incorporation, making Panacea a city. About 24 hours after that vote, the chairman of this commission appeared in Tallahassee before legislators and announced that he was for this bill. The bill just voted to be against it. I understand the chairman excused his 180 reverse because he said that he was depending on Representative Halsey Beshears to fix the bill. Well, that fix turned out to be a fantasy because Representative Beshears did not fix the bill in that committee meeting at all. Then I understand there was an argument that there just wasn't enough time to fix this bill. But there was a whole week to fix the bill until the next committee meeting in Tallahassee. And when Representative Beshears presented that bill to that committee, where was this county's chairman there to protect the citizens of Wakulla County? He was nowhere to be seen. Why is this a bad bill? Why did all of you vote not to support it? Because it's going to financially hurt all the taxpayers in the county of Wakulla, everybody, to make Panacea a city. The way this bill is running through the legislature to the House, this bill is going to make every taxpayer in this county pay for the city of Panacea. In addition to that, the bill also has provisions for the people in Panacea to have higher water bills, electric bills, property taxes, and some people argue that that's a dream, but it's not. Right now, Wakulla County pays 8.5 mills for property taxes. St. Mark's, when it became a city nowadays, pays more than 13. That's huge. That's a lot to pay for being a city. In addition to that, the way the bill is written, the people of Wakulla County may pay for the election of the Panacea residents for this bill. But they're not allowed to vote on Panacea becoming a city. Get that? Every taxpayer will pay for this election, but not be allowed to vote. I call that un-American, and I will say that again and again, that you are not allowed to vote on a bill that's going to force you to pay for another group of people to become a city. And what can you do? You can stand up and tell Mr. Beshears to pull this stinking bill.
Thank you, Ms. Peck. We appreciate your comments. Next, we'll go into awards and ceremonies. Our presentation, we'll ask Mr. Tim Center, Executive Director with Capital Area Community Action Agency.
Mr. Chairman, members, I'm Tim Center. I'm the Executive Director of Capital Area Community Action Agency. We have an office here in Wakulla County, and we are the federal safety net for the 8-county region that we serve, paid by federal funds to help folks who are struggling to make ends meet, and unfortunately that's more and more folks each year. This year we wanted to give you a quick update as to what we're doing and then invite you to help us on a couple of different initiatives that we are undertaking. One is that recently we just relocated to the One Stop, and hopefully through better partnership with other agencies that are in the community, we can better serve the families and the residents there by helping them pay their utility bills for those folks who are qualifying to live in poverty, which is about $20,000 for a family of 3. Just last year alone, we helped about 619 individuals take care of their electric bill, keep their light bills on, and be able to take care of themselves at home. Speaking of home, for those folks who have come back to us on a regular basis, we have some dollars that we've been able to hire contractors to come in and make those homes more energy efficient. We weatherized about 7 of those homes this past year in Wakulla County, and there are plenty more folks who could qualify, but we don't have the funding to meet their needs. More importantly, though, is we have a program that's designed to help get people out of poverty, and we're most proud of that program, and that's one of the 2 invitations I've got for you today. One is we have a program called Getting Ahead and a Just Getting By World, and we are taking applications for folks to go through this 15-week program. It's 2 hours each week, where we work together on a workbook, through a curriculum, through that period of time to basically work out of helping people get out of the tyranny of the moment and begin thinking about what they might want for their future, and giving them the tools and resources and the understanding necessary to operate from a middle-class value system. It's been very successful so far. In the 5 communities that we're offering the program, we've had about 100 folks go through the program. 85% of them actually complete the program. You can only miss a couple classes. That means 85% of those folks have gone through for the 4 months for 2 hours each week just to make sure they're going to help themselves get ahead. So my invitation is for folks who might be watching this to apply for Getting Ahead by contacting our agency office. But the other is to do this, because we are launching a new initiative called Staying Ahead. Helping people get ahead is one thing, but helping them stay ahead is more important. And that's where we're asking for citizens of the region to become mentors, to become a friend to people that are working their way out of poverty. And those folks that are in middle class, they may have some resources, they may have connections, they may have perspectives that our folks coming out of poverty can benefit from. And over the course of 6 months, 6 different dinners with all the mentors and mentees together, we think we can foster better relationships amongst those classes. To help us complete our job, we have been fortunate to have 2 of your residents become board members to our organization. Charlene Lanier and Cherie Keeler are both on our board, and we meet every other month, and they are very dedicated to being part of our board activities, and want to thank them very much for that. But the other part is this. They've told us that we've got to come down and tell you about Pig Fest, which is all about barbecue, blues, and beer. So I don't know if you're a dry county or not, or depending on where you are, but I will
No.
Okay. But as it relates to coming up to Tallahassee, we'll have all 3 available for you. But on June 6th, Saturday, June 6th, if you could, save the date, plan on coming up and joining us and encouraging your residents to come up. It helps us enable us to put together those programs that I've just referenced earlier, but it also is a day of celebration for the community. We have more than 30 cook teams, including Myron Mixon coming in from Georgia. Sonny's has got their competition cook team, and also 4 Rivers from Orlando coming in. We will have bands playing all day, and we'll have a lot of fun. And in fact, I'd like to ask David or the chairman to figure out amongst one of you to become a celebrity judge because we're going to have a restaurant blind.
Thomas.
A blind. There it is, right there. A nice little competition amongst the restaurants on a blind taste test to see who's got the best barbecue. So hopefully Ham Knockers will come on up and compete as well. I do encourage you to come up and encourage your friends to come up. It's a small entry fee, but the money goes to a good cause, helps us out tremendously. And if there's anything we can do to help you or your constituents, please do not hesitate to call us. You can look us up online on our Facebook at capitalareacommunityactionagency.org. Glad to be here. And Mr. Chairman, thank you very much so much for the
Can you
time.
take a couple questions?
I will. Be glad to.
What counties are in your...
We're Jefferson all the way over to Gulf County and Calhoun County.
You really should, at some point, go to the Appalachia Regional Planning Council. It's 9 counties. Every one of them, I think, is in there. And you could catch 9 counties at one shot telling them about what you guys do.
But I like the personal attention. I will do that. That's a great suggestion. Thank you very much.
Reach out to their office. Chris is the executive director.
I'll give Chris a call. Thank you very much. Good suggestion.
Any other questions?
Excellent.
Thank you, Mr. Center.
Mr. Chairman, thank
Appreciate you coming down. Next, Mr. John Schuff, representing Wakulla County Economic Development Council.
How y'all doing this evening? I'm John Schuff, 87 Tupelo Drive. I want to thank you for allowing EDC this time to update you on our progress towards developing a strategic plan for our county. We've had our second meeting on March the 24th, and again had about 25 attendees come to the meeting, including Dave, Cherie, Louis was there, and Mr. Thomas was there also. Bruce Ballister with the Appalachia Regional Planning Council, Jim McShane with Capital Region Career Source, Bobby Pickles with Duke Energy, Bob Ballard with Wakulla Environmental Institute, and Jim Brook with Opportunity Florida will be regular attendees through the whole process. So I think we've got a real good core group of people that help us along the economic development road there. Also, our school superintendent, Bobby Pierce, has been attending. He's a very key cog in the wheel with what he's been doing with encouraging more vocational education in our school system, which I think is great. And while we're working on a plan for EDC, it is a goal to develop a plan that the Board of County Commissioners would consider integrating into a county-wide plan at some point in time. It's rather unusual to have a strictly private volunteer EDC, as the benefits for economic development accrue to us all in the form of jobs and expanded tax base for our commercial and residential entities without having to raise taxes. Very important to county government, I'm sure you all know. We are currently conducting an online survey with the help of Opportunity Florida to better understand the interests of our citizens. We ask that you all, anybody at home or here in the room, go to the Chamber's website and fill out the survey. Have a little button at the end that says done. Just hit the done button, and we've had probably 75 or 80 of them done so far. We're trying to get as many as we can. Developing the plan will increase our eligibility for grant funding that will allow us to develop a website that will bring Wakulla County into the economic development community and allow our area to be considered for site selection groups that use the internet to create their short lists to decide where they want to have their next site. As we probably mentioned before, 70% of companies that are from out of town that are looking for a place to locate their next site, they create their short list without ever walking out of their office, and if you aren't there, then you're not there. Yesterday I reviewed a strategic plan for Taylor County, which kind of surprised me that they're way ahead of us. Went to the Taylor County. They have it's like an 80-page plan that they went through, and they evaluated all their deficiencies and all their pluses, and then they also their development authority, which the county formed, developed a website which is similar to what we're trying to conceptualize, and I came away feeling that we're way behind the curve, even for Taylor County. I would encourage us all to pull up these two websites. Just punch in Taylor County Economic Development, and it'll take you to the Development Authority, and you can see what they've done, and relate them to what we have here in Wakulla County. Please let me emphasize that we're not looking through rose-colored glasses here. We just feel that we need to evaluate what we do have and then put what we do have out on the marketplace so that people will be able to understand more about Wakulla County, understand what Wakulla County wants. That's part of the process, and let the chips fall where they may. As we move through this path, along this path, we'd be remiss not to have a discussion about a relationship between the county government and EDC. it's very unusual to have an economic development council that's run on a volunteer basis. It's just a massive amount of work, and the continuity probably just wouldn't be there to make it effective over long term. At some point in the near future, we'd like to ask you guys to schedule a workshop to review our progress in detail as we get a little further along and to discuss our shared interest in economic development. We meet on the fourth Tuesday of every month at TCC here in Crawfordville from noon to 1:30. We've been providing lunch. Somebody sponsors lunch each month, and we'd welcome anybody to come and help with the process. And if y'all got any questions or comments?
Are you still looking for participants for your survey?
Yes. I thought I mentioned that, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Go to the chamber website and fill out the survey. It's pretty easy.
Okay.
I support your efforts to develop the website in order to get us more exposure. I've seen, you and I have talked about it in the past, to where other rural counties is not even as big as Wakulla. If you go to 850 magazine or Florida Trend magazine or websites, whatever, they've got a whole pages just pretty much laying out why business should come to their county, but we're just not there. We're not there. So if somebody is trying to draft that short list, we're not even on the radar.
Yeah, as Nicole said in her newspaper article this week, the light bulb's turned off in Wakulla County. We need to turn it on.
Turn the light bulb on. How's the enterprise zone being sunsetted in the legislature?
It seems like it is going to be sunsetted in October 15th, I believe, is the date.
Going to be picked back up. Is it scheduled to be picked back up later, I think I heard?
I don't think so. I think it's going to go away. I mean, the only good thing about that is that it's going away statewide.
I was never aware of how much benefit you can get subsidized for your employees' salaries if you locate in an enterprise zone. There's all kind of benefits.
Yeah,
I never realized.
And I talked with Halsey about it just the other night at the Low Country Boil, and he said, it was a really hard sell because we didn't use it.
Right.
Yeah. A lot of people didn't know.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Anyway, thank you, and look forward to your participation.
Thank you very much. All right. Entertain a motion
I'll
to
move
approve
consent.
the consent, minus items number 8, 11, 12, and 14.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Item number 8.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mhm.
And I'd like the administration to go over the changes.
This agenda item requests board approval to schedule and advertise a public hearing to consider adopting ordinance governing the citizen initiative process for proposed charter amendments and ordinances. This was as per direction of the board, staff's bringing back draft policy or draft ordinance basically to hold on, let me get my notes here. Yeah, do it real quick. I can't find my notes.
As you know, there are 2 sections in your charter that allow citizens to go through a petition process to either do a charter amendment or an ordinance for the county. What this does is provide some clarity. It doesn't, on top of what the charter says. For example, the charter currently says that they have to file reports on number of signatures gathered as they're going through the process. It doesn't say what that report exactly has to include. It doesn't say when those reports are due. So this sort of closes some of those gaps. In addition, there are various types of published notice that have to be done. The first one is for the citizen sponsor to do at the beginning of the process, but there are numerous other steps if they are successful in gathering the required number of signatures and having it put on the ballot. There are additional notices. For the one citizen initiative that we've had come through, the county paid for those notices, but in this ordinance would change that and would require the citizens group, the sponsor, to pay for the notices throughout the process. This also, when the wetlands ordinance came through that citizens initiative, there was some issues regarding the perceived legality of the ballot summary. What this is attempting to do is to sort of stop those issues and catch them up front before signatures are gathered, And by doing this, what we're suggesting is that when they submit the proposed ordinance or charter amendment and they submit proposed ballot language, that they submit a legal opinion with that, saying that the purpose and the contents of the ballot summary and the ordinance are legal under Florida and federal applicable
Who provides
federal law.
that
The
opinion?
The citizen sponsor would get an attorney licensed in Florida to do that.
Because the wording of the ballot summary is critical, I think. I mean, you can
It
either
is.
leave this out or leave that out, and it could be legal, but
Well,
we own it after it's approved, right?
there are requirements in Florida law for what a ballot summary has to do, and there's a wealth of case law on it, as far as communicating the main purpose. There is a rule that is used mainly for constitutional amendments, but if it came to it, I'm pretty sure a court would probably find that highly persuasive as far as the counting and the contents of a charter amendment, because the statutes deal with any referendum question.
At what point do we own it? Once all the signatures are in, then it becomes the county's
I guess
referendum.
once you decide to either, with an ordinance adoption process, you have an opportunity to either say, okay, we'll adopt this ordinance, or no, we're not going to adopt it, but we'll put it on the ballot.
Then the ballot summary is ours, so
Yes, but what this is attempting to do is to get buy-off on that ballot summary up front so that it stays consistent throughout and there isn't a last-minute
a buy-off from an attorney, not from the county.
from an attorney.
Does this correct the problem of what the citizens signed, the petition that they signed, that identical product goes to the ballot?
Yes,
This
that is
corrects
the attempt. That is the attempt here. And so that's it. There's not much else in here. There is a statement, to Commissioner Moore's point that if there's changes made during the process, they need to start regathering signatures over. I think that getting the legal opinion up front and getting everyone on board, at least giving the county some legal opinion to rely upon up front, will help mitigate that to a large extent.
So I'll make a motion to approve. I wanted to get this out so that if there were any citizens who wanted to give input or whatever, or be aware that this was coming forward, I think the suggested modifications are all in the best interest of the county.
I'll second it. And this is a motion to advertise to hold a public hearing, which
Correct.
is yet to happen.
Correct.
Any public comment? None? Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Next, we'll jump to item number 11.
Louis, can you take care of that one, please?
Yes, sir. Commissioners, this agenda item is to request board approval to schedule and advertise a public hearing to consider an ordinance amending Chapter 3 of the Land Development Code pertaining to public notice requirements for administration of the Land Development Code. We provided a draft ordinance as Attachment 1, and basically what this does is provide some needed clarifications and updates. It also incorporates board direction to provide additional notification of major PUD revisions and major site plans, which are site plans over 20,000 square feet or more of building floor area. The ordinance also mirrors closely Florida statute requirements for public notification, so more closely follows the statutes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We're recommending approval.
And again, I brought this forward for just the information and awareness. Again, there is my understanding that there's going to be expanded notification, clearer way of dealing with this, and that all of these changes would be more easily accessible.
Something like what happened at the Flowers shouldn't happen again.
Correct.
Well, what this takes you back to statutory requirements, but as Louis said, in 2 instances we've expanded those to require mail notices. Right now, under just general law, the only thing that would require mail notices is certain rezonings. So obviously that's in here, but at the board's discretion, we've added, same thing for major PUDs, or modifications or an initial PUD, and what's the second?
Major site plan.
Major site plans over 20,000.
We have a first and second. Any citizen comments? Further discussion from the board? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Tab 12, request board approval, and let me finish reading all this because I need to add an item here, add on. Request board approval to adopt resolution accepting dedications of rights-of-way within the Farms Subdivision Phase 2, Silver Glen Phase 2, Walker Mill, Savannah Forest, Sellers Crossing, Hidden Meadows, Magnolia Park, and Lindsay Mill platted subdivisions. I'd also like to add Mallard Pond. We just got that in, and we'd like to add that onto this agenda.
So moved.
We'll adjust the resolution or the acceptance.
We have a second.
A second.
Citizen comments? Discussion from the board?
Again, this was informational, and this finishes our old subdivisions. As far as we understand it, if they had an opportunity to apply and they didn't, those are not going to be considered in the future. Is that correct?
The private roads, as far as we're concerned, this cleans it up.
I didn't realize there was a window of opportunity.
There's still, if you're a platted subdivision and you're in development now, like, they can come forward, but they have to meet our criteria. Yes.
Didn't we send out a larger list?
we
and
sent out a
these
larger
are the ones
request.
that replied.
Those are the ones that replied.
Correct.
That's right.
But in that notice, did we give them a drop-dead date? Did they had to reply by a certain date?
Not that I'm aware of. No.
So those may still come back?
Those may still come back.
Okay.
But this cleans a bunch of them out.
Okay.
Bunch of them.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 5-0. Next, item number 14.
Yes, this agenda item requests board ratification of a letter to Representative Halsey Beshears with proposed amendments to House Bill 593, Panacea Incorporation. Also, I'd like to hand out to the board this is part of the discussion as well. As you know, the board voted 5-0 to send a letter to Representative Beshears stating that our concerns with the House Bill 593 as it is currently, as it was written, and we were asking for the amendment to be, we would not be in support of it unless the amendment was adopted. Since then, the bill has made it through the legislature. There's a few hurdles left, but the amendment has not been assigned. We're asking to either ratify or not ratify the bill at this, or our letter at this time. We have negotiated with Panacea in Waterfronts and representative of Panacea Incorporation, and what I gave you is a general agreement of a resolution that would that we both came to agreement on, and just as part of moving forward. And this will be coming back to you on the 23rd, and we're also going to ask several of the citizens that have negotiated and spoken on behalf of Panacea Incorporation that have been in negotiations to sign it. Also ask for approval on the resolution from Panacea Waterfronts.
What is the status of the bill right now? Is it gone through all committees?
I'm pretty sure, yes.
And
Just
it's
had gone on the board.
going to the floor, and
It's scheduled.
Yes, scheduled.
so it's scheduled to go to a floor vote?
Yes. Go to the House first, then the Senate.
And what are the chances of it passing the legislature, you think? Pretty good?
It's made it this far so good, so good so far, yeah.
I think it looks,
I think it's automatic.
yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
But I would suggest that we hold off doing anything on this letter until we get the resolution signed by Panacea Waterfronts and all the individuals, and then in the next meeting bring up, and then if that gets signed, then you guys can decide whether you want to move forward with eliminating the whether you want to ratify or not ratify.
This gives us another opportunity of negotiation with Panacea
Yes.
in order to clear out the confusion that we may have
Exactly.
had.
Exactly.
And hopefully we can do that, and then we can ratify it going forward and whatever.
Or not ratify the bid. That's right.
Or whatever.
That's right.
Yeah. Do you need a motion on that?
Yes.
I would make a motion that we do that.
That motion would be to not to just
To
to
negotiate.
continue and
To delay this.
have the resolution signed by Panacea
Yes,
Waterfronts and all
yes.
those. Okay. To table it until the next one, until that is signed.
That is correct.
That's right, yeah.
Well, the options are either ratified or do not ratify it. Is that right?
You can table it.
Okay.
We have a motion to table. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have one citizen, Ms. Dana Peck.
Dana Peck, 2481 Surf Road. This seems like a desperate, pitiful, pathetic, foolish, or brazen attempt, pick any adjective you want to snooker the people of Wakulla County. Whatever you do here is irrelevant. It has absolutely no authority over a city of Panacea should they have elected officials. So you can put a crown on a toad or lipstick on a pig and you still have a toad and a pig. And that is the very bad, hurtful bill going forward now to the House of Representatives, where you can ask Halsey Beshears to take it back. I would invite you or dare you to ask your attorney what clout any of these proposals has. And the answer is zero. Zero. It looks nice, it's worthless. In addition to that, I forgot to mention, you all pay $4,850 to a lobbyist on behalf of Wakulla County. Right after you voted 5-0 to oppose this horrible, hurtful bill, your high-paid lobbyist, if you ask me, stood up in a committee meeting and said he was for the bill. Now, I don't think he was working for the interests of Wakulla County at that moment, since you all had just voted 5-0 to oppose it. So, as a taxpayer, I'd like you to try to get some of your money back and maybe put it on the election that we're all going to have to pay for the little city of Panacea.
Thank you, Ms. Peck.
I'm the one that made the motion to send that letter, but it seems almost a foregone conclusion now, and I guess David's going to work on this resolution. I've said this saying before, I'll say it again. I'm not going to run off the cliff with my flag flying. There's no need to burn bridges over this, so I just don't think it's going to do any good at this point. So,
I hear you.
even though I don't agree with some of the things in there, and I've told these guys that publicly, we agreed it would be revenue neutral, and I really hope that's the way it ends up being, but anyway.
I think the ultimate decision is going to eventually rest with the citizens of
Correct.
Panacea to vote whether they want to or don't want to become a city. You know, and I have said in the past that I do support Panacea's efforts with wanting to become a city and self-govern themselves if that's what they vote to do. I'm going to respect them one way or the other, whether they vote or whether they not vote, but I am supportive of the citizens of Panacea having I believe that they should be given the opportunity to vote one way or the other. You know, some of the same citizens that are now not wanting them to have the right to vote, some of the same citizens spent a year arguing the exact opposite. You know, and I believe that Panacea should have the opportunity to decide if they want to or not want to become a city, and we need to facilitate that. But I will also say that I don't agree with a portion that is written in the bill. Because we had a workshop. We had a workshop where we talked about the part about neutrality, and that was led by this commission to believe that was going to be in the bill, and that portion ended up not being in the bill, and is progressing through the Senate committees with that not being in the bill. So I would actually be in favor of this resolution for the fact of simple that I think that whatever agreement the county and the future city of Panacea has needs to be written somewhere, whether it's written in an addendum or whether it's written in a resolution. But I do support Panacea's efforts to be able to have, for the citizens to have the opportunity to vote their future.
And just to be clear for the public, we're not voting on the resolution tonight. That's not part of
And
what's in front of us. Howard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we're speaking about House Bill CS HB 593, the proposed incorporation of Panacea. This bill is sponsored by Representative Halsey Beshears, and Representative Halsey Beshears brought this bill forward because some of his constituents in Wakulla County, in Panacea, asked him to do so. Representative Beshears has pointed out many times that he is neither for nor against this bill. And although I consider myself a friend of Representative Beshears, I think this is a very bad bill for Wakulla County, and have voiced my opposition frequently. The incorporation of Panacea will result in unnecessary increased taxes to the residents of Wakulla County. The resolution that is being proposed to be worked on is a non-binding resolution. The bill is what dictates the terms of proposed incorporation. And to negotiate with the people, the same people who assured us revenue neutrality and then double-crossed us and double-crossed the citizens of Wakulla County by putting forward a bill that was not revenue neutral, that will cost the taxpayers money, I think is a sham. This board voted 5-0 to oppose this bill because it was not revenue neutral. It will mean increased taxes to the residents of Wakulla County and to the residents of Panacea. The board voted to send a letter expressing such opposition to Representative Beshears, and that was on the 23rd. On the 24th, our chairman signed a letter in opposition, and the next day stood and supported that same bad bill at the Finance and Tax Committee. This bill is bad, as I said, because it's going to make the people pay more in taxes. And, there's plenty of time for negotiations between committee meetings, and no amendment came forward. What's troubling to me, Mr. Chairman, is how could you, after voting for this opposition to this bill, which will cost more taxes and an extra layer of government, by a 5-0 vote, sign the letter, and then the next day support the bill? It seems like it's a betrayal to the board and to the citizens.
Not at all. I appreciate the opportunity to address that. Let me remind you, when we voted on that letter, there were two possible paths. We voted, one, if it was revenue neutral, we would support the bill. We voted that if it was not revenue neutral, we would not support the bill. That's what we agreed to. Now, when I went to speak before that committee, I spoke with Representative Beshears. He made it clear that it was his intention to let the committee know that he was going to inform them that the addendum that we recommended and the vote that we recommended was going to be submitted. He had full intentions of submitting that would make this revenue neutral. Given that assurance, at the time I placed my vote, I saw it as we achieved success. If he was going to float that would make that amendment part of the bill, then we have now achieved the possibility of revenue neutral. At the time I placed actually, I didn't speak before the committee. I waived in support of the bill, knowing that that was his intention after he said that. He also clearly informed the committee, crystal clear, that it was his goal to support the will of this board, and if we weren't supportive of the bill moving forward, then in his position, it was not moving forward. And so with that assurance, I felt that that's the best we can hope for. Now, when I waived in support, I did that as an individual. You guys authorized me to sign the letter. And so I signed the letter, I sent it in. When I had that assurance that he was going to submit that, I felt comfortable with us moving forward at that point. I signed as an individual because you guys did not vote for me to go in there and represent the board. You can certainly do a public records request and see that I spoke on behalf of myself. Much as when you spoke before the very first committee, you spoke on behalf of yourself, out of step with the rest of this board. We had voted 4-1, so the position of the board was to be for the bill at the first committee, and you voted out of step with it. And so you as an individual made your own decision, just like I as an individual made my own decision. Now, after I waived in support, the chairman of the board, Representative Gates, he made it crystal clear, and I recommend anybody play the video back and take a look at this. He made it crystal clear that he did not need Wakulla County support on this bill. Florida statute did not require Wakulla County support on this bill. That was their role, their function. He didn't care what we thought, and they saw it clearly. Several of the representatives spoke. They saw this clearly as allowing the citizens the right to choose their destiny. They specifically called out that it's un-American not to let people vote. At 2 different committees, those statements were made. So I stand by my decision.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was present at the committee meeting, and I voiced my opposition to the bad bill at that committee meeting where you waived in support, and I was part of that 5-0 vote that the board had. Prior to that, when I spoke, I was counted to the board's vote of 4-1, and I was consistent in my position, and I spoke as an individual. Being the chairman, I would expect, and maybe I'm expecting too much, but I would expect that the chairman reflect the board's decision, especially in a 5-0 vote. And no matter what his thoughts are, no matter how good or bad the direction might be, that he would be true to the direction of the board. I don't think that is up for discussion. I was amazed going to those committee meetings and hearing not only Representative Matt Gates, but also Representative Ray Rodriguez and other conservative Republican legislators speak to me in private and in public at those committee meetings, making statements like they do not see the incorporation of Panacea as another layer of government. How else can you see it? I was amazed to hear, sitting in and hearing at the committee meetings, Ray Rodriguez say, this will lower taxes. It will do anything but lower taxes. I'm disappointed in what has gone on. I think we've been betrayed by the people who told us they were going to be putting forward a bill that was revenue neutral, and I'm now feeling betrayed at multiple levels.
David, there's still...
Allow me make one more comment to clarify here. Regarding my role as the chairman, at that particular committee meeting, nowhere was I identified as the chairman of this board. Nowhere was I identified even as a county commissioner. They called my name only. And so certainly that's my role, but I represented myself in that decision. So I did not use the influence of this position, and I do not see it as inconsistent. We clearly stated that if we could get it revenue neutral, that we supported that. I expected you to support it, given Representative Bashir's statement.
Is it revenue neutral now, this bill that has now been agended to be heard?
Since
at the
that
House?
point, it has now become clear that that is not a path for success to even achieve revenue neutral. Representative Gates made it crystal clear that if Representative Bashir's moved that amendment forward, that the bill would be killed. And so then the citizens do not have the right to decide. Now, it's still up to us to make sure that we're protecting the county taxpayers in whole. And I think this negotiation that's been taking place and will have to continue taking place if and when this passes, and if and when 5 city commissioners are elected, we will certainly have to renegotiate these things and make sure that they sign off on them. But I see that as the only possible path to success. The Florida legislature does not need the opinion of these 5 commissioners in order to stop or start their process.
This is totally non-binding, and I'll end discussion there for myself.
David, there's still a lot of, sorry, Jerry, there's a lot that's not in here. For example, and you're exactly right, if they do decide to incorporate, then we just need to accept that and move on and act what we think is in the best interest of the rest of the citizens of the county, just like we did with South Choppy and St. Mark's. For example, Panacea has a lot of dirt roads, and I didn't mention anything here. Basically, we're talking about grading roads for gas tax dollars. We may look at it a few months from now, if this passes, and say we can get $5,000 in gas tax money and grade 50 miles of dirt roads, or we could say City of Panacea can do that. Isn't that an option we can?
That's true.
I mean, we could.
There's a lot. I mean,
we can negotiate quite a bit. And another point would be the right-of-ways are still going to remain the county right-of-ways, right?
They're still county right-of-ways.
So any utilities on those right-of-ways they're on county right-of-way,
Right,
correct?
which enters into there's a portion of their revenue that will rely on us being able to give them the authority to charge for that service.
Could a incorporated city of Panacea charge some sort of franchise fee for utilities
Only
on
if they own
county?
only if they own the right-of-ways.
If they're on county right-of-way, they can charge it?
No, only if they own, the city owns the
So
right-of-way.
Panacea couldn't simply, and this is just for informational
Right.
purposes. Panacea, say it incorporates, it doesn't immediately get the authority to start charging a franchise fee on county right-of-way unless we give them the right-of-way.
Right.
Or some sort of agreement.
Also, any property that's the county property now in Panacea is still the county's property.
My root
Panacea
point
has
is
the docks, the ramps, all that stuff is county property.
my root point is not really anything, but simply that there's a lot of negotiating room left on our side to make sure this ends up being revenue neutral.
There's a lot of interlocal agreements that are going to have to be negotiated. Is that right, David?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's a
Yeah,
lot.
that's where, this is just a start, but realize we got to negotiate all the interlocal revenues, which are interlocal agreements, just like we have for other cities.
We're not going to lose our hands
Well-
if this passes, is my
No,
point.
we have our share of.
But
Make sure
I
the
do
citizens
want I do want to say that even though I don't agree with some of the things that the bill has written, I do fully agree with the citizens of Panacea having the ability to vote or
I
for their
agree.
future one way or the other. And then also where that's coming from is, before I was a county commissioner, I was city commissioner of Sopjobby for 8 years. And so I've seen firsthand the benefits of what can happen whenever you're a city, the things you can come. Also, I've been on the other side of the table at city commission negotiating interlocal agreements with the county. So that's where there's a series of interlocal agreements that each one has to be hashed out on its own merit and its own thing. I mean, there's a whole process, but I do support Panacea's efforts in becoming a city, and I want Panacea to have the ability to vote for it one way or the other. But I think there's a lot to be worked out still in negotiating, and that's why I think this resolution is a start. And I think there's other there's going to be things beyond this as far as negotiating interlocal agreements to where we work the finer details of these things out.
I agree. I love Panacea, and I love the rest of the county, too, though.
I'd like to address this to Howard. I'm somewhat confused. You spent 2 years on the wetlands. Every meeting that I heard, it was the citizens' right to vote. It was upside down, inside out. The citizens' right to vote. And here you want to deny the Panacea citizens the right to vote. I'm confused on that. Clear that up for me.
Let me help you, Commissioner Moore. 30% of the citizens of Wakulla County signed a petition asking for the right to vote on the wetlands issue. Here we have a small group of people, many of which do not even reside in Panacea, going forward with this. They did not conduct a straw poll. It is not a grassroots effort. It's a small group of people. There's a huge difference between that and what went on in the wetlands.
Is there a difference in the right to vote between one group of people and the right to vote in another group?
I don't know if you've heard what I said, Commissioner Moore. I mean, there's a huge difference between a small group of interested people, not a grassroots effort from the citizens of Panacea. There's a difference there, and I don't know that you're...
Call the question.
comprehended. I second that call.
All in favor of calling the question? This is not the vote.
All right.
Aye.
All right.
Okay. So, no further discussion. We have a motion and a second on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll work with,
Passes
I'll work with
5 to
Panacea.
0.
I'll work with Panacea
Oh,
Waterfront.
I said an opposition on my part, so make that my vote opposed. Thank
We need to
you.
revote?
on that one.
You did.
Do we need...
That was the table.
Oh,
No, no.
Oh, the table. Yeah, I'll still be opposed. Yeah.
So do we need to revote on that?
Clarify that.
Negative.
The motion was to table this to the
Table
next.
this and bring it, and whenever, and bring it back next meeting with this
are
resolution.
you going to address the things I talked
4 to
about?
1, Randy?
You can't catch all those right now, right?
No, we can't catch everything, and this is just to get a general agreement.
Framework.
This brings the county in a revenue neutral
I want to,
area.
basically, me personally, would be an understanding from these guys that we're going to do what it takes to make this revenue
Yes.
neutral.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
you know, we
We haven't
have-
played all our cards
We
yet.
have cards
still-
in our
we'll-
hands.
We still have about 5 more, so.
Because that's just what we should do in the
Yeah.
interest of the rest of the citizens of the county.
Right.
And I am in favor of citizens being allowed to vote in Panacea. I do think, though, we need to work out some more negotiations.
Yeah. And this gets us forward, and this is a general agreement, and we've negotiated this, and we've had their input on it. I'll be presenting it to John Moyle and then send over to all the individuals to sign. Everybody has to sign it, as well as the Panacea Waterfront has to bring it forward, and if not, we'll ask to ratify the letter. Okay?
All right.
All right. Thank you.
We'll move into our general business, tab 17.
Yes,
Motion to
tabs-
approve the sheriff's office to donate $5,000 from the Wakulla County Drug Trust Fund
I
to
second
Project
the motion.
Graduation 2015.
Second.
First and second, any citizen comments? Comments from commissioners?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'm unclear as to what this money is being used for. I know it's going to be used for the project graduation, but what exactly is going to happen at project graduation that is in line with the use of these funds? As I understand it, there was a problem in last year's graduation. I'm just concerned about what we're asking to approve.
Well,
We have a
I would ask...
representative, we have a
if-
representative of the sheriff's department here.
2 of them, actually.
Yeah.
Jan Sanders in finance. It's to keep the kids...
Could you put that microphone?
Okay. Project graduation will keep the kids from going out drinking and partying to celebrate graduation.
You hold that at Wakulla Springs,
hmm
Are you asking me a specific question?
and how many kids show up at that?
Probably 140.
I want to know what's done there.
Well, I want to add to that, I just want to...
Kessler had a question, I
Okay,
think.
go
Yeah, so are there activities that will be
Mhm.
taking place there that help the youth understand better options, or what exactly takes place?
Well, the officers are available. They interact with the kids at project graduation.
I think it's more to give them something to do instead
Yeah,
of doing
keep 'em
something else.
occupied. There's
Yeah. Okay, so it's just basically a party.
Me and Ralph didn't have that when we were in high school. did we?
Actually, I did.
Did you?
Yeah, I think my year was maybe the first or second year.
They must have learned from you and canceled mine then.
Yeah.
I'm in support of project graduation because I think it provides a good alternative, and also just statistically around the nation on graduation night, there are tragedies that occur statistically around the nation, and this is, you know, even though it's only 100 or 140, each of those person represents a life or whatever that.
Yeah.
So I support the program.
I think we all support the program. I think what I'd like to ask from the Sheriff's Department in future items, whether it's this or other, is that you provide some backup material.
okay.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank
That
you very
sounds
much.
good. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Item number 18.
Louis?
Yes, Commissioners, back in February, the board directed staff to prepare recommendations for revisions to the county's platting requirements to address concerns about bonding of required infrastructure for subdivisions at the time of final plat approval. The concern, as I understand it, staff was required to possibly pursue and monitor the completion of infrastructure if it was not completed by the developer. There was also concerns expressed about the ability to draw on letters of credit as opposed to performance bonds. What we're looking for is additional board direction on this as a possible starting point to address the concerns mentioned at the February meeting. Staff is recommending that bonding only be allowed as an option after all of the subdivision's primary infrastructure, which is water and sewer and roadways, is in place, with the exception of the final lift of asphalt on the roadways. The board may also want to consider not allowing letters of credit or only allowing them below a certain amount of required infrastructure. So I guess we're looking for additional board direction before we draft an ordinance on this.
I think the idea of awaiting the major infrastructure before bonding, and I personally would prefer a bond and not a letter of credit, that's a good medium, I think, because you still got all your culverts, you got all your sod, and you got to do your cross drain, so you still have another 30 days out, probably, David, would you say, by the time you lay that layer of asphalt before you're ready to actually sell anything.
Oh, yeah.
What they're trying to do is pre-sell them, and if they could bond it after the major infrastructure is in place, like you said, water, sewer, I don't know necessarily so much stormwater, but I think if we said water, sewer, and the roadways,
Well, your stormwater is part of your roadways.
in most,
And you gotta have all that done, so.
well,
Does
Gardens
that-
of Saraland, for example, their stormwater is not part of their roadways, it's ponds.
But that also, most places, though, the roadways feed to a pond or feed
Hidden
to a
Meadows,
ditch.
you remember too, going out and meeting
Feed
on
to-
that.
Feed to a ditch or something, and that's part of your stormwater. It's safe just to say, that way all of the country's stormwater, all major infrastructure.
That's fine.
I tend to agree with you. You know, you and I agree so much, I probably don't even need to come. But really and truly, it's my...
Give me a chord.
It's, I agree with Randy. If you bonded from day one, when the guy begins his subdivision, if you bond at that time for everything that he needs to do, is that what you're talking about?
No. Actually, that's the exact opposite of what I'm talking about. So we
Well,
may not agree on this one.
I still need to come then.
That's what we allow now, and that's what has gotten this county in trouble in the past, Hidden Meadows being a good example. The developer goes bust, they had a letter, well, in that case, we
Now,
did
a
call
letter
it
of
bond.
credit, that's different than bonding though.
Right,
That's
yes.
what I'm talking
Yes.
about. Yeah.
My main issue was,
Y'all are back in agreement. so
They
you
had
don't
a
have to
bond.
come.
We're back in
Bond,
agreement. I
It was
don't
just
have to come.
underfunded.
right, it was
Right.
underfunded.
Right.
But my two issues here. The main issue with me is that we stop accepting letters of credit,
I agree.
because you can go bankrupt and that's gone. A bond is
Agree.
it's forever. It's like a
It also shows the financial stability of the developer.
right. Now, the other elephant in the room is, when do we allow them to bond it? and that's what we talked about the other meetings. Do you allow them to bond it when it's just raw land and start selling lots immediately? Or do you wait till it's closer to being done and then allow them to bond it before they can actually sell a lot? You know, still give them time to pre-sell some stuff.
I think we're in a lot better situation for ourselves and for the county and for the citizens that are purchasing if we get closer to the infrastructure being almost fully in place.
And that's what staff has recommended,
Yes.
that we bond it only when the water, sewer, stormwater, and roadways have been built. Like I said earlier, you still have another 30 or 60 days of construction to do before you're going to start selling homes, but at least then they can start selling lots, they can build model homes, right?
That is one way to do it, yes.
Yep. I agree with staff, but I agree with your comments as far as the bonding.
But you wouldn't be able to take a piece of raw land, plat it, record a final plat at the courthouse without ever cutting a tree down, and then start selling lots, because that's what has gotten us in trouble in the past. Because we don't have the staff, even if they have a bond, we don't have the staff to go in and supervise construction of sewer, water, and roads and all that stuff.
So basically, you're saying you start bonding before they start selling lots. That's the point.
Can't sell a lot till it's bonded, and you can't bond it till after the major infrastructure is in place.
And you can't do we don't accept letters of
No
credit.
letters of credit.
Well, yeah, you would be bonding, and I realize if you wait for all the infrastructure to be in, it'd be that final lift of asphalt, and it'd also be they can bond any type of amenities, such as a pool house, a
Sidewalks,
clubhouse,
culverts,
sidewalks,
mitered
stuff like
ends.
that.
Anything they've
That's right.
promised on the pro forma.
Anything they
that's out.
promised on their, that's right.
Does anyone disagree with staff's recommendation? Do we need a vote, or you just need a direction to move forward? You're going to bring it back as an official item?
We will, and I guess I'm hearing no letters of credit include that. Okay.
And then the point of where it bonded is when the central water, sewer, stormwater, and roadways are in place. Now, I would say the major portions of. Now, David had thought that everybody that builds a subdivision puts a final lift of asphalt on it, which they don't around
That's
here.
something that we need to,
talk
especially
about
in
that.
some of these subdivisions, we need to look at that because the problem is by the time we take it over, they're already damaged, and a lot of times if we can have it to where it's staggered in right before we take it over, we put the final lift, and that way we got it. That's done all over the place.
That's a future issue for a
That
future
is-
day.
That's
but
a future issue, as well as we got some widths of bifurcated roads that we're going to be bringing back to you guys in an emergency session. So.
And I had suggested that we have a bond for the first 2 years that we release only after the roads are accepted by the county. That will motivate the developer to
Keep them
get
in good
everything
shape,
done, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I think maybe we should put it in the form of a motion where those points are recognized. Louis has a direction because that's what he's asking for. And I want to commend Mr. Cerna for bringing this item forward in the way that he did. Unusual, but very appropriate.
I'll make a motion that we only
I
allow,
think Howard just made a
No,
motion.
well, I'll second it.
that we direct staff, you want me to make it?
Yeah.
You can be like, Jerry, I don't need to be here?
You don't have to do that.
Recommend bonding, not letters of credit, bonding only be allowed as an option after all the subdivision primary infrastructure, central water, sewer, stormwater, and roadways are in place.
And no
Letters
letters
of
of credit.
That's why I said bonding only.
Okay.
I don't know. Good with that?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Tab 19.
19, this agenda item requests approval of Administrative Regulation 10.01 regarding private road ownership and maintenance acceptance. What this is as per board direction. You know, we have been asked we've been asked in the past about how to, if I'm a property owner and I have a private road, we down our neighborhood, how do I turn that over to the county? What this establishes is that process to do that and fully spells out the criteria that's needed for you to do that,
But they
and the widths of the road, et cetera.
they have to turn it over to the county first before the county maintains it, correct?
Yes.
Well, okay, just wanted, okay.
And I just want, through the process of doing the board briefings, I want to recommend that you give us direction to add, you can approve it tonight if you're so inclined, but add one bit of clarification. This administrative regulation applies to private roads, that they want to transfer the property ownership to the county and have you maintain them in the future. It does not apply to roads that are dedicated to the public on a plat but not yet accepted.
Right.
And that's sort of the clarification I would recommend that you have us add, because we have a separate code provision already for that, for the 2 years or the.
Well, actually, it's more complicated even than that.
No, it is, but those roads that are already dedicated on a plat, you don't have to go through a lot of these procedures. I don't think there's anything inconsistent here, but.
I'll make a motion to approve with Heather's recommendation, but I did want to talk about a couple things.
Second.
Any citizen comments? None. Further discussion?
Cleve, general requirement A7 says demonstration of compliance with applicable design and construction standard. Does that, what is that? Transportation element of the comp plan? I thought that was kind of addressed later, saying you got to have 20 feet of drive-in and 1-foot swales on either side, because the design and construction standards, demonstration compliance with the design set forth in this policy, applicable section of Wakulla County Code. What I don't want to say is, well, the code says it's supposed to be paved. We won't accept it till it's paved.
No, that is.
But you want to go?
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
You kind of repeat yourself at the introduction. Then the second part addresses the unpaved roads, then the paved roads. So we'll go in there, and it's applicable to each type of road that we have at that time. But we just kind of repeats itself here in the way we got it written up here.
And who's going to determine whether or not they need to put rock on their road or not? Like in summer when, that had a bunch of lime rock sticking up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't really make them do anything.
Okay, we don't need any rock there.
I mean, who's going to decide, though, that, yes, you need to put rock on, because it's very expensive?
Well, that's something that's the question that we asked, was there may be certain areas, like in a low area where there's already an existing problem, to rock that section of it, that we would have to come back and rock anyway, because there's certain areas that as you know, that we install rock now that's our problem areas, that they may say it's cheaper for us just to put some rock down here than it is to do all this, the undercutting and all that stuff.
This says that they pay for it, though, based on
this
county's recommendation.
Right. This would be primarily a road that never had rock on it to start with. I mean, you're thinking about a road that maybe had been.
No, I'm thinking about something like, just pick ABC subdivision with a dirt road. Who decides, all right, you guys need to shape the road up, and you need to put rock down before we'll take it? Who decides whether or not they put rock?
That's our Public Works Department, along with our consulting engineer.
Yeah.
And so the homeowners will know those terms going
Yes,
up front.
we will.
His staff will do an inspection and then
That's
let
right.
them know this is
Exactly.
what we're requiring. They can decide if they want to move forward or
Well,
not.
the only thing I'm worried about is that we make these guys hold themselves to a higher standard than roads we already maintain elsewhere in the county. I mean, we graded Wakulla Gardens for years and years and years without rocks there. And if a subdivision comes forward and says, we'll do everything you want to do, but we can't afford $150,000 for rock,
Right.
and we just say, well, too bad, we're not going to do anything.
That was not that intent was not to put rock down on the entire road. That was stabilizing certain areas, and also gives them an option that, like I say, they can either put the rock down or may have to undercut a certain area or just put the rock down.
Okay, because what it says is driving surface or right-of-way may be required to be stabilized with number 57 gravel, to be determined on a case-by-case basis through the development of the construction plans, which it may not need plans, right?
No,
I mean, I guess you're just trying to cover everything.
That's right. We're
here.
trying to cover everything without getting complicated.
And can any of these issues be appealed? For example, if they don't have a 40-foot return radius or something, I know the right-of-way has a dead minimum of 40 feet, which I agree with. 60 is the standard, 40 is the minimum allowed if they appeal it. But I guess maybe any of these they could appeal if they really wanted to.
And if you look there, page 3D1, upon submittal of a petition to Public Works for the county to consider acceptance of dedication for ownership and maintenance of private residential roadways, staff will inspect the roads to determine compliance with the design and construction standards set forth by this policy and applicable county codes and policies within the comprehensive plan. In the event the roads fail to meet these standards, staff will prepare a cost estimate based on continuing service contract, pricing to address road deficiencies. Additionally, staff may engage the county's continuing service engineer to prepare a cost estimate for preparation of the construction plans. Upon completion of the cost estimates, the property owner's authorized representative will be notified of the deficiencies in cost estimates.
I just want to make sure it's more like summer when, how that went. They did all the legwork, basically went out and started maintaining the road. They didn't have to.
Well, that one was a much easier case, too.
Right.
There's some that want acceptance now that we would have to go and spend a lot of taxpayers'
understand.
money, and that's what we want to try to avoid. Is
They don't have the right-of-way cleared, the road may not be in the right-of-way.
There's huge hills and huge valleys that need to be filled and cut and fill, and so that's the purpose.
And to your second your question, Randy, if you read D2, it does provide the Board of County Commissioners may consider a reduction of the required right-of-way to be dedicated based upon environmental, legal, or physical constraints.
I mentioned that earlier, that the floor is 40. The minimum is 40, though. You can go from 60 down to 40. Is there anything in here about them, I didn't see it, maybe it's later, but them requiring the homeowners to flag the right-of-way?
You got
Survey.
you got to get a survey and show clear ownership and dedication to the county.
Survey and legal description of the area. You may want to mention, because you can get a survey without flagging the right-of-way.
Also release of liens to make sure the lenders sign off on it.
You may want to mention that, because we need to verify that the road is actually, I guess a survey would do that.
We'll do it. Yeah, when we've gotten this in Summerwood, a fine example. We got that survey.
I'd like
we
to
actually had restake after we went up there to do the work.
I'd like to add to my motion, if we could, the survey showing all improvements and what's the infringements?
Encroachments.
There you go. Look at that. Is that all right with y'all?
Yeah.
Is that good enough?
Yeah.
That way we'll know that they have to show where the road bed is and the water lines. Is that we getting some no head shakes over there?
Oh, we're good.
Okay. Getting a little rowdy over there.
Our
in the corner.
second. How would you second that?
Sure.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
I used to have Cleve's job, you know.
That ends our general business. We'll now head into
I think
planning
there's
and
one
zoning.
add-on, there's an add-on.
We have an add-on.
Thank you for, I wrote it down and skipped
Whoa,
right
whoa,
past
whoa, whoa.
it. Animal control.
Request board approval to select members to the Wakulla Animal Control Appeals Board and appeals approve resolution appointing selected members.
I'd like to make a motion, but it'll be incomplete, and it'll require a second motion for one other person. I'd like to, there are 3 different areas with 2 people that are to be named in each area, and I wasn't able to contact all of them, but I'd like to make a motion to have in the licensed veterinarian, Dr. Linda Chalker, and as the member, and Dr. Norman Griggs as the alternate. On the animal behavior expert, Kathy Sherman as the member, and Ann English as the alternate. And in the law enforcement, Brian Spiegner as the member, but I wasn't able to make contact with the possible alternates, and there are 2. So that would be my motion for those at least 5 positions.
Do we have a second?
I'll second the discussion.
I think Ted.
Are the other folks that are that wish to be on that board? Do we have any other?
There was in one of the categories a person begged off if there were 2 members that wanted to be on it, and I advised that person that there was, and he was happy to withdraw his name. So there's no conflicts in any of the names that I've put up there.
So yours is consistent with the staff original recommendation?
Yes.
Okay.
Howard, would you mind reading those names again for me?
Sure. I believe it's Dr. Linda Chalker as the member,
Wednesday.
with Dr. Norman Griggs as the alternate, and that's under licensed veterinarian, animal behavior expert, Kathy Sherman as the member, and Ann English list as the alternate, and under law enforcement background, Brian Spiegner.
Okay.
Alternate,
The law enforcement?
an alternate member for law enforcement.
Yeah, that, I wasn't able to contact the there are two people there, that's going to need another...
There's a law enforcement, right? Huh? Shaking his head no.
There's two people on here that...
Yes, but I can't pick between the two because I didn't...
Someone amend it, if you'll...
Yeah, that would be
amend the
agreeable.
motion and then amend it to add
Yeah.
one of these two.
Or do a separate motion.
Or do a separate motion.
We can deal with this one and vote several.
Yeah, you
Doesn't
can
matter, either way.
add one alternate, either
Yep.
Rich English or Marshall Taylor.
We just do it now?
You can, sure. If someone knows these people and wants to make a recommendation,
I mean, I'm not making the motion, but I'd say Marshall Taylor.
I'll second that motion.
it's fine.
Okay, hold on, what?
What Jerry meant to say was he is amending his second to reflect Howard's amended motion.
Including Marshall Taylor.
You got
as
it.
the
Okay.
alternate.
That
So
is
now you got
correct.
all six.
You got it?
Yeah.
All right.
You got it.
So we're-
Okay.
I've been with y'all the whole time.
We're
Good.
good.
No way. Impossible.
Okay.
Any citizen comment? Further discussion from the board? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye. I was favor. I said
Favor.
aye,
Okay,
not nay.
passes 5-0.
Randy, don't write it down.
All right, so now that ends the general business. We'll move into planning and zoning, tab 20.
The first item that you have is an application for an appeal to this board, sitting as the Board of Adjustments. This is Board of Adjustment Appeal 1501. This is a quasi-judicial matter. Therefore, in accordance with Section 24.01 of the County Code, each commission member needs to disclose all contact you may have received from any interested parties or their representatives, any lobbyists, or other third parties that is concerning this appeal. Commissioner Harden?
I had a couple of citizens that did call me from the surrounding area, and I had one or two members from the Historical Society concerning the neighboring cemetery.
Okay. Commissioner Moore?
I talked with Mr. and Ms. Alexander and also the person who's petitioned to open the lounge.
I
Commissioner
spoke
Towne?
with Linda Alexander, I spoke with Ms. Dee Shriver and received an email, spoke with Cliff Milligren, spoke with Byron Price and received an email from him.
Talked to Linda Galveston, Alexander, Colleen. Talked to Colleen. And I talked to the applicant, and I talked to the applicant's representative. I'm just saying I talked to you. Oh, okay. I think that's it.
Commissioner Kessler?
Yeah, so I spoke with Mr. Alexander, Cliff Milligan, Dee Shiver. I heard numerous people speak at least two meetings on this issue. There were just multiple people in the room, public-type meeting.
And then just as a reminder, if you have any written correspondence you may have received, it needs to be
Did I
forwarded
mention
for the
Dee
record.
Shiver?
Yep.
Okay.
Any written correspondence you may have received regarding this application needs to be provided for the record as well. That being said, if there's anyone here in the audience who is going to speak on this matter, please stand up to be sworn. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You're all sworn. And now I'll turn it over to Mr. Cerna.
Yes, Commissioners, this agenda item provides the board sitting as the Board of Adjustment with an application for appeal. The request is an appeal of a decision made by the Planning Commission in which they denied a conditional use, CU 1502, for an alcoholic beverage establishment. The Planning Commission considered this item on February 9th, 2015. By way of background, this was for a alcoholic beverage establishment. It's currently being operated as a liquor store at 2627 Spring Creek Highway. In the past, it has been used as an office and has also been used as a restaurant that served alcohol. The Planning Commission considered this item and failed to pass an amendment to approve with conditions, or failed to approve the motion to approve with conditions of conditional use, so it failed. And then the applicant has submitted this request for appeal. Working closely with the Attorney's Office, staff has provided standards of review for consideration of this amendment, which begin on page 5 of 6. Basically, the board needs to determine whether the decision of the Planning Commission was supported by competent, substantial evidence, and whether the Planning Commission correctly applied the relevant provisions of the county code in reaching their decision. Staff is recommending option 3, which is to conduct the public hearing and vote to uphold the Planning Commission's denial of the conditional use for an alcoholic beverage establishment based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law made by the board and any evidence submitted at the hearing.
Mr. Chairman, if I could have 1 minute. You also, all in front of you, have the minutes from the February 9th, 2015 Planning Commission Board, so you can see the testimony that was provided to that board. This is specifically a part of the record now. I'd like to move that in. And then second of all, although you're allowed to take, anyone here is allowed to speak on this matter, what you base your decision on should be confined to the record that was presented to the Planning Commission, because you're sitting as an appellate body.
Just for my own clarification, what we're here to do as an appeals board is not decide whether or not this place should be there or should not. What we're here to decide is, did the Planning Commission make a decision based on correct evidence, and did they apply the county provisions correctly? No matter what we think personally about the establishment, all we're doing is, did the Planning Commission do their job correctly? We should take our feelings about the place itself out of the equation. It has nothing to do with it, really.
That is correct.
We are looking to see, are we exposing ourselves to lawsuits if we uphold their decision, or do we think they did it so wrong that we need to reverse their decision? I'm not going to vote to reverse it, so I'm just glad.
I also want to...
I have a question on that. Then I would pretty much say, then why are we here? Because we have an attorney to establish whether they've done right or wrong. So it should not be a decision that I make. It should be, did they follow the law? If they followed the law, then we go by the law.
Well, but, you know, you are in this instance, sitting as an appellate court, not me. What your code provides is that it comes to you as the Board of Adjustment. You're supposed to look at the record that was prepared at the February 9th, 2015 Planning Commission meeting, the materials, the testimony, that's why you have the minutes, determine when the Planning Commission looked at this item, was there competent, substantial evidence to support their decision to deny?
I appreciate that, but you are my attorney. And I ask you then, did they or did they not?
We don't have a grand jury, though. If we had a grand jury, they would say, yes, they can appeal it, or no, you don't have grounds for appeal, so we just automatically let everybody appeal.
I can tell you that the conditional use standard is highly deferential to the county. It's unlike, we've talked about platting in the past, where if they satisfy the code requirements, they're basically entitled to get it. Same thing with zoning. It's the exact opposite with a conditional use. That is a privileged use of land that you can grant them or not. You have discretion to not grant it. And basically what your code provides is that if they find that it's not in the public interest, they don't have to approve it. And the Planning Commission, based upon the evidence that was presented to them, made that determination that they were not going to grant it.
They determined that
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say, I think we have a very capable staff in the Planning and Zoning Department. We have very capable members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I believe it's the role of the Planning and Zoning to accurately vet these projects, and I believe that they were competent in their decision. I believe they were correct in their assessment, and everything that I've read in it, I am in agreement with the decision that the Planning and Zoning Commission made, and I'm going to uphold their decision.
Let me make one more clarification, if I could, just for the public, really. When we have other issues like zoning or site plans, the Planning Commission makes a recommendation, correct? Am I right, Melissa? Yes. They make a recommendation. We can vote however we want to after that. In this case, they were the decision maker, not us. They were the decision maker, and their decision is being appealed to us, and we have to determine if it was done according to the laws of the county and not incompetently, basically.
I believe it was done in accordance with the laws of the county.
Now, to your question, Commissioner Moore, there was testimony presented to them about potential inconsistent uses between having a bar next to a cemetery. The testimony as summarized, there was concerns about it being disrespectful, there was concerns about funerals being conducted, and there's a bar next door, and those inconsistent property uses going on at the same time. There was testimony presented to the Planning Commission about potential concerns about increased traffic and more trips on the roads. In addition, there was some testimony about noise concerns from a bar.
And without even irregardless of those specifics, you're just giving examples of evidence that was presented.
Yes, that's all I'm saying, is he asked what evidence was presented, and I'm saying
Does it matter if we agree with those or not or whatever? Again, we're not voting on whether or not really there should be a bar there or not. We're voting on, did the Planning Commission make a correct, did they apply correct methodology to make their decision?
And you can rely on testimonial evidence like that. It doesn't have to be scientific studies and such. What I would caution you from is, if somebody stands up and you've got counting heads, I've got 7 opposed and 4 in favor, so I'm going to go with the 7 based on sheer number, and they haven't said anything except for I'm opposed to this. That would not be competent.
We would have a wetlands
evidence.
ordinance today if that were the case. Right, Howard?
Don't know.
Basically, competent substantial evidence means sufficiently relevant and material evidence that a reasonable person would see as adequate to support a conclusion. In this case, you have some evidence that shows potential inconsistent uses. Whether you as a board feel that that's substantial competent evidence is this board as a whole's decision. And that's what you're voting on.
For me personally, just looking at what we're voting on makes the issue a lot simpler for me.
So this issue, when it came before the Planning Commission, the applicant had the burden of proof to prove that his application was consistent with local rules, local law.
And was in the best public interest.
Correct. And so at that point, he had to determine if it was consistent with zoning, with our future land use map, with any distance requirements but located from an alcohol facility such as churches and things like that. At the time of application, did they meet the burden of proof that they met it? And I'm asking that question, but I know you did recommend to the Planning Commission, you recommended that they approve it when it came to the Planning Commission.
Yes, I mean, in addition to what you mentioned, we also look at the impacts of the operation, the size of the property, what's around it, and things like that.
So at the time of application, they met their burden of proof? And then
In staff's opinion, yes.
I just want to make sure that the citizens know, then the burden of proof shifts to the opponents, correct, to prove that they did not meet the burden of proof.
Under a traditional zoning standard of review, but here with conditional uses, what your code says, it gives the Planning Commission the authority. In fact, it says the Planning Commission shall grant no conditional use hereunder unless it finds that such use will not adversely affect the public interest. So
Correct.
They need to make that finding. We think that there's an adverse impact on the public interest, and therefore we're not going to support this. So they have more discretion with a conditional use and things like that than they do with it like a rezoning or a plat.
So I have a question. In the board hearing this, and the Planning and Zoning Board saying, well, we've listened to testimony and we don't think this is in the best interest of the public, can this board with the same evidence provided disagree?
What you would do is look at the evidence and say, as a board, we don't think this is substantial competent evidence to come to the conclusion that the public interest is not served by this use of
Not relitigate it all over again. Just say what the Planning Commission did, the evidence they relied upon is not what I consider substantial. And let me clarify the case about in the best interest of the public. It says the Planning Commission shall grant no conditional use until it finds that no such use will not adversely affect the public interest. That doesn't mean it has to be in it. It just means that the use is not going to adversely affect it. Those quite a bit of difference between not, you know what I'm saying?
Very good. Do we have a motion?
I make the motion to uphold the planning commission decision.
That's option number 3?
Yes.
Okay, I second your motion.
All right, let's allow the citizens to speak. Ms. Frances Baker.
I attended the last meeting, and I was born and raised here in Wakulla County, and I remember the lady's name was Dee Shriver, I think, and I don't remember the man's name that was actually speaking about buying the property and putting a liquor lounge there. But the cemetery has been there for many years, and I can understand him wanting to put or her, whoever wanting to put a business there on that corner, and they were speaking about the people in Shell Point wanting some place to go, not having to go drive all the way into Crawfordville to enjoy themselves, and they could just go right down there. But I think that all the people that are buried out in the cemetery and everything, people have family out there. I mean, it's not just family members. I have my mother, my grandmother, my dad, my brothers, my sister, people in my neighborhood that I grew up with, and I know y'all are saying that y'all have to look at the evidence that was presented, but cemeteries are kind of like churches and stuff. I mean, and when you start thinking of what's next door, that's kind of like somebody coming and putting a lounge right next door to your house and everything. And I just think that if you got a bar there, and they're open early on Saturdays, and they open on Sundays, then when you got a funeral over there, and he said that he would most likely, he would be respectful of it, but how are you going to quiet down a crowd when you got a funeral going on? How are you going to tell these people, shh, funeral going on over there? I don't see how that's going to happen. Not only that, I told them that in the last year or so, I've gone into the cemetery and found beer cans piled this high. At one point, I actually thought it was somebody, probably kids or something, going over in the cemetery and just partying. But on further research, I found that that's probably not the case, because my mom and grandmother are buried the closest to their establishment now. So I got out and walked into the bushes right behind their graves. And behind there, somebody cleaned out the beer cans, but I can show you pictures right here of what's there right now. There's liquor bottles, beer cans, still there, and they didn't just get there, they've been there for a while. So somebody's dumping liquor stuff in the cemetery. And I think that if somebody was trying to put a bar or a lounge up in the middle of Crawfordville by the funeral home over there, I mean, why not put it right down on the corner of 61, Shaveville Highway and 319. That'd be a good place for it, don't you think? I mean, a lot of them people out in that cemetery, they work for a lot of people. I mean, a lot of y'all, some of y'all are older than me, so I know it's probably somebody out there that worked in your home or your mom's home or worked in the fields or something like that.
Ms. Becker, I should have said up front, we have a 3-minute time limit, but since I didn't, if you could just go ahead and wrap it up.
All right, and they mentioned last time about the graves that were already moved, so I went down and looked. There's no markers, and she said they were right outside their drive-through. So I don't know where they're at because I don't see them. If they're already right outside their drive-through, if they're going to make something else, what's going to happen? This report here says there's 30 graves that were already on their property that they disturbed or found or whatever. If they're going to put another bigger building there, what's going to happen to those 30 that's on their property?
Thank you, Ms. Baker. Appreciate your comments. Cindy Webster.
Hello. I'm an Appalachia Bay resident, and I didn't come here tonight to speak, and I didn't attend the Planning and Zoning Board meeting, so I may not be knowing all of the facts, but I have a great amount of common sense. And even though I might never attend the proposed establishment, I feel that there are many reasons why it would be very good to have this located at this particular location. As far as safety, they could have chosen many other places, as mentioned by the previous lady, and yet they picked a well-lit intersection, one that kept every car that was attending that establishment off the back roads where they might have had an establishment. I don't know how many of you go back down some of our Wakulla County roads, but if they put one on a less main road, we would have had people driving late at night along roads where deer and other animals are poorly lit. I would think that was more of a safety hazard than to have an establishment like this located in the intersection that is proposed. Secondly, as far as the cemetery goes, I understand how people feel about their loved ones, but I also understand that when people purchase cemetery lots, they do not purchase and control the land outside of the area where their cemetery is. I lived in a big city, and on a main street in that big city, there was a historical cemetery. People were walking past that all of the time, and no one ever said it was disrespectful. In New Orleans, we have cemeteries that are tourist attractions. I have relatives who are buried in a cemetery right along an interstate highway. No one has ever thought of that as being disrespectful because we did not own that land. The people who are purchasing that land are purchasing a commercial piece of property. And I feel that if we start dictating to people based on the surrounding areas, then we're never going to have businesses coming to Wakulla County. And I probably haven't used my 3 minutes, but I have made my 3 points. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Webster. Next, Mr. Irvin Gaskill.
My name is Irvin Gaskill, and I had a prepared speech here, but I don't think you folks will want to hear all that. So I'm just going to say that, you know, we put that, Mr. Milgren is in the process of, he has the liquor store open, and he can make a living at the liquor store. But if he takes and puts the lounge there, he'll be hiring at least 2 or 3 more people. I believe that that tax money would be good at Wakulla County. I think you folks would enjoy that. And I think we'd enjoy having a couple more people working in our county. I think that's what it's all about. It's property rights and the ability to do it without infringing on someone else. And when they talk about the noise factor and the safety factor, we have a very capable Wakulla County Sheriff's Department that has ordinances on the books. It's 65 decibels of noise after 9:30 at night. They will enforce that and can enforce that. The safety issues that are at the corner down there, they're going to continue to be there. MDOT's done a study, says it doesn't need a traffic light. I think it needs a traffic light, but they don't think it needs one. So based on that, I'll tell you folks, that, and I know you boys have all campaigned at one time or another on property rights. Here's a chance to prove it.
Thank you, sir. Ms. D. Shriver. D. Shriver.
Okay, I did give you down on all a package of materials, left them in your box. I don't know if you looked at them, but we weren't really prepared for the other meeting. We were told by the planning and zoning that we were in compliance on everything. Don't worry about it. We didn't realize there were going to be any issues brought up at all. So that's why we're here tonight. I presently own the property at 2627 Spring Creek Highway. I purchased it in October of 2003. The past 11 years, it was used for a real estate office and also a packaged liquor store for 3 years. We had 4 employees while I had the liquor store opened until July of 2014. I closed the liquor store after my business partner passed away. In January this year, Clifford Milgren agreed to buy the liquor license and property for a package store and lounge. He was approved by the Department of Business Professionals, Division of Tobacco and Alcoholic Beverages, for the license to reopen the store. He made application to the Planning and Zoning Department for conditional use permit for an alcoholic beverage establishment as required by the county for a lounge. We were assured that we met all the requirements required by the county. When we appeared at the Wakulla County Planning Commission meeting, Planning and Zoning recommended to the committee that they approve the application. They could see no reason why it shouldn't be there. 7 citizens spoke in opposition regarding adverse impacts the lounge would have regarding 3 concerns: noise level. One property owner, the Alexanders, who live, their property is 500 feet north of my property line, were the ones concerned. As you can see by the plat that I gave you, my 2.47 acres is surrounded by 21 acres of woods and 1 acre strip for the cemetery. There's 800 feet from my property line to their home. That's a quarter of a mile. I hardly think there's going to be a noise factor there. I cannot imagine noise would be a problem. There are noise regulations in section 21.064 that will be followed. Traffic. There have been accidents on that corner due to the convenience store and gas station fronting all directions. My property entrances have been diverted away from the corner with clear views for easy access. There were never any accidents caused by the liquor store traffic in the 3 years I was there. Planning and Zoning did no studies on that. A lot of people drive through my parking lot to get to 98 because it is such an issue.
Thank you, Ms. Shriver.
I also want to say that there are no graves on my property, and I submitted evidence of that in a survey that was done in 1991 to prove that the berm was built so there wouldn't be any issues.
Thank you very much. Cliff Milligren.
Good evening. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to hear this appeal. The issue about the noise, there's already an ordinance. I think it's already been discussed and doesn't need to go any further. The intersection is an inherently dangerous intersection. It was no less dangerous when the Mexican restaurant was situated on my venue, which also served alcohol and played music. In respect to the intersection and the lounge, none of the entrances or exits egress directly into the intersection. The only exit that I'll have proposed is going to exit on the Spring Creek Highway side. On the Highway 98 side, I'm going to use that as an entrance for the drive-through only. Finally, the cemetery. I understand the concerns. I truly do. And I do not intend to disrespect any family holding a service at that cemetery. In the past 15 years, there have been 12 services held at that cemetery. That's according to the Wakulla Historical Society. The cemetery, there's been no measures taken at this time to keep people from entering and doing whatever they choose on the 3 sides that do not border my property. Okay, if there are sanctions taken against my property, you know, to put in this lounge, I think it should be a joint effort with the cemetery, because, like I said, there's 3 sides that are not covered. I have put in video surveillance. If there are any issues whatsoever, I will cooperate with the Sheriff's Department in any way possible. The objective of this business is to provide jobs, and I hope a lot more than 2 or 3. I would love to provide as many jobs as possible.
build revenue for the county. And gentlemen, that's about as far as I know to take it. I just want to do a good job, be proud. I want to live here. I want to be a positive aspect of this community. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Donald Davis.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Donald Davis, and I have been up and down that road for many, many years. I rode in it as a school bus, and one of the things, and it's right about this time of year that the only thing that is for certain is death and taxes. Well, another thing is for certain that is a dangerous intersection. Now, I was in the Marine Corps for 21 years, and I retired, and now I am a registered nurse. I work in an operating room. And I hear you wanting facts up here. You just don't want people's opinions. You want facts. So I'm going to provide you with some facts that, to the best of my ability, that I can. I hear you speak of assess. So anytime that we do anything, anytime I went into a combat situation in the Marines, we had to assess the situation and determine the hazards. And if we could avoid a hazard, we would. So by assessing something, and then you speak on top of in the interest of the county. So that road right passes. I'm not very good at speaking in public. It's my first time actually, so I'm a little bit nervous here. But I use that road to travel up to the convenience store in the evenings on several occasions. And sometimes, having small children, I just put my kids in the back of the vehicle, drive up there, and just to give the wife a break and give her. Anybody who has kids, small toddlers, know that give the other parent a break. So, go up there to the convenience store. Anytime you go to the convenience store, you run the risk of, meeting individuals up there who are just getting their beer and going out and having a good time. You assume that risk. Okay, that's just a risk of where that store is at and what people use that convenience store for. So I guess my argument or my opposition is based on why would we put another hazard in the area, and how can you justify that an establishment which will serve alcohol is going to be in the best interest of the county. Dr. Kessler, I don't know if you ever had the opportunity of harvesting organs or harvesting tissue. And I know you need facts and stuff like that. I had the unfortunate obligation of harvesting tissue from a young lady in her 20s a few weeks ago. And it was due to blunt force trauma. And you could tell anatomically that this individual was a parent. And in her 20s, I'm sure that her kids are small. And we get to know certain facts whenever we do harvest tissue. We can't harvest organs unless the individual's alive. Now, another thing, just being on a roadway, where do they put our organ donor identification at? On our driver's license. Okay? So I understand I'm out of time, but just take that into consideration.
Thank you, sir.
Don't put an additional hazard.
And you're also Greg Davis, correct?
I am Greg
There's not a separate Greg Davis, right?
No, that's me.
Okay, I have two cards. Miss Colleen Mitchell.
Mitchell, I thought your last name was Skipper.
Skipper Mitchell. I added up
There we
the
go.
last name.
I knew something happened.
To the Honorable Chairman and County Commissioners of Wakulla County, I opposed this proposed bar for the following reasons. This historical cemetery is a place that my 51 years of living in Wakulla County, born and raised here, a lot of elderly citizens of our county over the years have gained peace and comfort in knowing that this would be their final resting place. I have relatives, I have co-workers that I've worked with in Wakulla County at the Richardson Cemetery, and the cemetery was there first before the buildings actually became on the land. I've traveled the roads and intersections daily, carrying my grandson to school, and I am well aware of the accidents that have taken place. And believe me, I have nothing against bars. But I have petitions here that are signed, and the individuals are opposing the bar and the location, and I also oppose it. Do you guys are y'all gonna look at these?
If you'd like to submit it, I mean, I think you heard from the county attorney, we can't make a decision just based on the volume of people for it or against it.
Okay, but you want them?
That's up to you.
People?
If you'd like to submit it, we'd be
You
glad.
give them the brandy if you want to give them somebody.
Give them brandy?
There you
Okay.
go.
Thanks, Brandy.
Thank you.
Good job, Brandy.
Ms. Anjanita Rozier.
Good evening. I stand before you tonight. I also attended the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting back in February, and I've also voiced my opposition against the opening of this establishment as a lounge. As a citizen, a lifelong resident of this county, I think that a lot of people share that same sentiment. In addition to having an invested interest in my community, I also have, just like many of you here, have had the opportunity to bury a loved one. And when we lay our loved ones to rest in a cemetery, that's a place that when we can't, on holidays and family gatherings, when we can't look across the dinner table and look at our loved ones, we can go to that cemetery and lay a flower or wreath in remembrance of them. And that's one of the main motivating factors that I think needs to go into that decision. When we go to that cemetery to visit our loved ones, it should be a place of peace, a place of final rest. That's what a cemetery is designed for. So I ask tonight that if in your decision-making process that you would think in terms of that, think in terms of your loved ones, where they lay in their final resting place, and use that as a factor in motivating any decision that you'll make on this decision tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Betty Green.
I'm Betty Green, live in Crawfordville, and for a long time was president of the Historical Society. And we go back to, I think it was 1989 or so, when we first started working in that cemetery. And after a while, I bought the cemetery, and now the Historical Society owns it, and we're proud of it, and we have workers here that help take care of it. And the main thing tonight that I was upset about is that the fact that when we were here before, it was read to us at the beginning, the decision made by that planning board will be final. And we all looked at each other and thought, uh-oh, but the Planning Commission did agree and did hear our voices. And then tonight we're told that that was sort of like a waste of time for us, which, you know, it hurts. But anyhow, I do want to ask you to consider the lounge. That's the problem, is that they're going to be staying there and drinking, you know, and listening to music and having fun. So they're going to be soused when they leave, and that's a danger. And I just beg of you to let the earlier decision rest. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Mr. George Apthorpe.
I live at 2888 Spring Creek Highway, which is about a half-mile south of that intersection. It is, in my opinion, and I think the record would hold true, one of the most dangerous intersections in the county. There are accidents there all the time, very serious accidents. I worry a little bit about vandalism in the cemetery. I'm from Tallahassee. I've lived here for a long time now, but the cemeteries in Tallahassee are vandalized all the time. This cemetery, the Richardson Cemetery, not a lot of people know it's there because you can't see it from the road. There's no place on the road that you can tell that's a cemetery. I think when more people find out that there's a cemetery there, I truly believe that there will be some vandalism. I am one of 2 or 3 people that help maintain that cemetery on a fairly regular basis. We go in and mow and trim and whatnot. Getting back to the intersection, we know that there are a lot of accidents caused by texting, but I can tell you that blood alcohol is going to be a lot worse than texting as far as contributing to accidents. And that intersection just shouts, you know, let's don't have a bar there. Although I haven't officially adopted our section of Spring Creek Highway, I do clean up the litter there 4 or 5 times a week, and anybody that lives in Shell Point or Spring Creek at some point in time sees me out there picking up litter. I wave to all of them, including Dee Shriver. I consider her a friend. But I do know that there is going to be an increase in the litter load in that section. So help me keep Wakulla beautiful.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Sandy Cook, Apthorpe.
James Hennessy one.
I'm another one of those, Randy, that has 2 names. I go by either name, you know.
We get confused very easy, Sandy.
Yeah. I'd just like to go on record as opposing this proposal. I probably won't repeat a lot of the things that have already been said, but it is a dangerous intersection. I lived at Wakulla Springs for 20 years. That was a dangerous intersection, so I moved half a mile down the road from another dangerous intersection. And I think the difference is that people will be consuming alcohol there and going through that intersection. There'll be some impaired people, and so it's a bad place for it. I too am one of the people that helps volunteers to maintain that cemetery. There's a lot of unmarked graves that we continue to find. They're out in the woods, so I just want to go on record as opposing it, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Last speaker is Ms. Linda Alexander.
Commissioners, Ms. Schreiber gave you a packet. I didn't know she was able to do that. I would like to give you my packet. My packet does provide facts. It also provides pictures. Thank you.
Thank you, yes, ma'am.
Honorable Chairman and Commissioners, the proposed property backs up to historical cemetery. Per the Richardson Cemetery articles on the internet, there is at least 143 graves there, and people are still being buried there. Would you want a bar next to your loved one's final resting place? In Wakulla County, we don't disrespect the dead. My husband and I live at 2561 Spring Creek Highway, which is 468 feet from the proposed bar. We have owned property at this intersection since 1988. We, along with our neighbors and the undersigned citizens of the attached petitions, are very familiar with this intersection. We have seen minor accidents, serious accidents, and fatalities. Per Wakulla County Sheriff's Office call history listing for 2015, there have been 3 accidents at this intersection since February the 17th to the recent one of April the 2nd, 2015, which I have got pictures for you. The year 2014, there were 9 accidents at this intersection. In the spring and summer months, this intersection is very busy with people going and coming from the beach. Also, Highway 98 is heavily traveled with people going to Panama City. We have this many accidents without a bar and band. With the addition of a bar and band, along with impaired drivers pulling into this intersection, will become deadly. I support the people having the right to do as they want with their property, but not when it's detrimental to the health, safety, and welfare of the public. There is a reason for the conditional use section in our zoning code. It is not just about site plans, forms, etc.
It gives planning commissioners a chance to address items such as items 5 and 6 of Section 3-21, which ask questions. What does this bar have to offer our county? It's not a good example for our children. Will it promote the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens? I think not. Will it be in the best interest of the public? No way. Will it enhance property values? No, they will go down. Will it be good planning and zoning? Definitely not. The Planning Commission made the correct decision in denying this application. We respectfully request the Board of Adjustments to honor the Planning Commission decision and deny this approval. I'd like to say something else. Highway 98 entrance is very, very dangerous. To the east, there is a hill.
Thank you, ma'am.
Noise ordinance is from 5 a.m. to 2 a.m.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That ends our citizen comments.
Well, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, fellas, but I want to base my decision on, one, whether the decision of the Planning Commission was supported by competent substantial evidence, and two, whether the Planning Commission correctly applied the relevant provisions. All the things we've heard, to me, I hate to say this, are irrelevant. We're not relitigating the matter all over again. Did the Planning Commission do its job, or didn't it? It's that simple. You know, I'm not even going to comment on how I feel about the bar one or the other, because that's not what we're here to decide on. That's already been decided.
Well, I'm basing my decision that I feel like the Planning Commission was correct in their assessment. I believe they're very competent staff, and I support the decision that the Planning Commission made, and I'm going to uphold it tonight.
Further comment?
Question, County Attorney. So, as I understand it, and I hear the majority of the board already saying that they're on support of the supporting the finding of the vote of the Planning and Zoning Board, but the question of information provided up to the time of that vote, finding sufficient testimony or evidence for the board to have made a proper decision that's either way, either for or against. Is that correct?
You mean competent, substantial? I mean, the board had to have, the decision that was made was not to approve it.
Correct.
You're looking to see was there competent, substantial evidence before them to support the decision that there would be an adverse impact on the public.
Okay, but my question goes maybe a little differently, is with the testimony that was provided by both sides, because, and although all the testimony given this evening, and I concur with Commissioner Merritt, as per the guidelines of how we're supposed to function as a adjustment board, could the Planning Commission, with the evidence or testimony provided, voted completely the opposite and still be on firm support?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
That's all right.
I think what it boils down to is, was there evidence presented, yet they could have heard the same evidence and voted the other way?
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that. But we just have to see, was there, we're not questioning their vote, we're questioning was there evidence presented. They could have decided either way.
Yeah, that's where I was getting to.
Okay, and you're entitled to look, I mean, there's, you know, the minutes are before you, you've got the materials that they considered, you've heard additional echoing of the same comments that they heard as well. But, like I said, your task is to determine whether that decision they made was supported by competent, substantial evidence and consistent with your code.
I would
sorry, you have
suggest,
pretty narrow.
if you
narrow
guys
framework.
agree, that's what's before us. Can we point our finger to competent, substantial evidence? That's not only in local code, but that's in Florida statute, that's in case law, And so, you know, the best way I can prove or disprove that is let's break it down. This is what I heard as far as the opposition to this. Please listen along and tell me if you've heard any others that I didn't write down.
Let me say something before you start, if I could, please. I think the whole way we're doing this is wrong inherently, is that we shouldn't be having a second public meeting. We should all be sit down and watch the video, look at the minutes, and then make a decision, because our judgment's getting clouded by everybody talking again. You're fixing to cite, and that's fine, you're fixing to cite things people just said, but we don't know if they said that at the planning meeting, right?
You've got the minutes.
I mean, but what people said here tonight may or may not have been said at the planning commission, correct?
That's correct.
And we're only supposed to base our decision.
We need to make that conclusion.
We're only supposed to base our decision on what was said at the planning commission.
We need to make that conclusion.
That's based on reading the minutes.
Exactly. Or you know, staff input, or any way that we can confirm that information.
Right.
So whether we know, so here
you understand what I'm saying?
I do, and believe me, this is a tough situation. None of us want to be in this situation, because somebody's going to be happy, somebody's going to be unhappy with the decision, and ultimately we could get it right, we could get it wrong, we could get sued. I mean, who knows? We need to, I think, pay proper respect for this thing, and let's break it down, let's dissect it. The objections that I heard: traffic problems, noise problems, the distance from the cemetery, respect to those that are buried there, vandalism, blood alcohol level of people that will patron there, and property value. I mean, if you guys heard any others, and I think we ought to break these things down and see on each one. Let's take them separately, because obviously we understand that we'd rather build a church than a bar. Well, you know, we'd rather have, but we've got to. We're in a situation here that if we don't get this right, it's going to cost.
What you're saying is evidence was presented, okay? So we can check that off. Whether the direction was supported by substantial evidence. I think you just said that.
Well,
they could have made a total different decision. They could have voted to approve it based on the same evidence, but was evidence presented? Yes. You just read down a list of things.
Traffic. Can we show that this establishment is going to create traffic that's going to be harmful to our county? And if the answer is yes to that, and it could be yes, if the answer is yes to that, are we going to say no to anyone else who's going to increase traffic in that area?
I don't think we have to show that it is. It says, herein, unless it finds that such use will not adversely affect the public interest. They made their decision that apparently they thought it would affect the public interest. That's a very, 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 very broad statement, and it's very open to interpretation.
So if they were here tonight and we asked them to show the competent, substantial evidence, what would we see based on our packet, based on our minutes, based on what we've received?
Heather went over that earlier. Do you want to go over it again?
Sure. There is a paragraph in the minutes that talks about different trip generation between a restaurant and a drinking place, and it talks about crashes at that intersection.
Is there a distinction between a package store and a lounge?
The trip data that was presented was a quality restaurant generates 7.49 trips. I'm assuming that's what the Mexican restaurant was. So the previous use that is often used to show is 7.49 peak hour trips. This is per the Institute of Transportation Engineers Manual, which is a very well-recognized source of trip data. A high turnover restaurant, which would be like a drive-through, I guess, fast food drive-through, which has not been there. There's been no drive-throughs there, right? No. That would generate 11.15 p.m. peak hour trips. A drinking place generates 11.34 p.m. peak hour trips. So there would be per 1,000 square feet of floor area.
To a restaurant pretty close, is that?
The restaurant was 7.49 up to 11.34. Okay. So it would be expected to generate additional trips.
So are we tasked, this standard of review, are we tasked to determine that this traffic would be increased, or the traffic would be increased to an unsafe, unacceptable level?
You're basically tasked to determine whether the Planning Commission made an error.
Yes. Have they subject us to being sued for denying this?
If you take that same analogy, any intersection in the county, we just don't do anything on any intersection.
That's what I'm
Again,
afraid of. We
we're not
can't have
here
a-
to re-decide the issue. They've already decided it. We're here to decide if they based their decision on evidence. Even if they voted for it, did they base that decision on... I'm personally not going to make this hard by taking a side on it. My only thing is, did they make a decision based on evidence? And I think they did.
So if the planning commission in the future approves other establishments, alcohol or otherwise, that are going to have a similar trip charge, aren't we going to have an inconsistent application of our rules?
That would be for them to decide. Whoever's the
Well,
sitting
but
planning
we're going to be
commission
the
at that
ones that
time.
end up having to settle the lawsuit if that happens.
Are we gonna, let's say you decide to reverse it tonight. Are we then exposing ourselves to a lawsuit from the citizens because we reversed a planning commission decision?
Maybe that's an answer for our attorney.
Well, there's a lot of different, they hit on trip generation, they hit on the potential inconsistent property uses, so you don't have to decide based upon one leg of the stool. I would encourage you to look at the entire record and make a determination of whether you think the planning commission was incorrect.
Well, and that's why I was attempting to try to go through each of these so we can apply that competent, substantial evidence to each one of these. I mean, I'm just one vote up here. You guys decide if we want to be able to back that up, if we want to be able to stand up and be able to point to and say, okay, that is the competent, substantial evidence. Because if we can't do it and we get that wrong, it's going to be brought out in court, or it potentially could be. I hope that doesn't happen on either side.
It's met the standard as far as I'm concerned.
Does anyone else want to go through that and demonstrate where the competent, substantial evidence is on each of the objections that were raised?
So I asked those questions, and where it shook out was that it doesn't have to be hard data. It has to be reasonable testimony. And, that's why I asked that question before here. Could that planning and zoning board have reached completely the opposite decision based on the same information provided, and could they have been on firm grounds? And I think the answer to that is yes. So that's the dilemma, and we're asked to now address solely whether they erred, and if they could not err voting yes or no on this, then that's a difficult...
That's a good point. They could have voted either way, right, yes or no, based on the same evidence. Would we find them in error if they'd have voted the other way? Would we then find them in error? No, we'd say they voted based on evidence, and they reached their own conclusion.
I hear what you're saying, but what we're being asked is to second-guess their decision. Basically, put us in the place of a judge. If this gets beyond us and we get sued, the judge is not going to say, well, they made up their mind. The judge is going to see the evidence. The judge is going to see, okay, they had it based on competent, substantial evidence. And if the judge agrees, then the judge will uphold
Let's take a jury trial. You can have 12 people see the same evidence as everybody on TV has seen and reach a completely different conclusion. I'll give you a good example is O.J. Simpson.
Sure.
12 people found that man not guilty. They based their decision on substantial evidence. I don't agree with that, but they found him not guilty. So
I want to call the question, Commissioner Merritt.
Huh?
Commissioner Chairman, I'd like to call the question.
I'll second that.
All right, the vote is to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes 5-0. So now the vote before us is to uphold the Planning Commission's findings. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. Passes 4-1.
Who was the one?
Ralph.
Me.
Okay.
And that is our last planning item.
At least it's over.
Next, no scheduled commissioner agenda items. County Attorney,
Nothing this evening.
County Administrator.
Yes. Just to give you an update on debt collections, Nanette is doing a very good job. She's getting her arms around a lot of stuff. We're going to be in, just to let you know, we'll be contracting with United Collection Services, and what that'll be for is for the collection services, the debt that is currently that we have that's over 90 days old. We're giving that we're going to be sending that off, and there'll be a 20% charge on that once they collect the debt, they'll get 20% of that. That's debt, though, that we just, right now, we can't collect. That's, so anyway, we're working that way to shore that section up.
How old is the debt?
Over 90 days. It's any debt that's over 90 days. Currently, we don't have a whole lot of debt that's over 90 days, or anything that's like a year old. We've already cleaned a lot of that up. This is stuff that's 90 days to a year old as of today.
90 days to a year.
Right.
So so the 90-day clock is from the time that we initiated a bill?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we realize this is debt that we've worked them to a point, and then once we've worked them to a point and we can't collect, then we send it off. What these folks are able to do is actually put it on, they're going to threaten to put it on a credit report,
I got you.
etc. Also, a reminder, we've got another workshop on before the next board meeting. It's on Restore Act. It's an update on Restore Act.
At what time?
3 bells.
Say that again. Repeat.
3 o'clock. 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock.
Restore Act.
At our next meeting.
Next meeting.
Gotcha.
3 o'clock. April 20.
Vice stenographer over there. I joined Ralph in that vote. It was a 3-2 vote.
I did not hear that. I didn't count that.
He needs,
yeah,
he needs to have hearing aids.
That may be
Your phone's been ringing for the last hour. You haven't even heard it. Talk about hearing aids.
County Administrator, are you finished?
That's it.
Any citizens to be heard? All right, Miss Nikki Barnes.
Nikki Barnes, Crawfordville, Florida. I didn't intend on speaking tonight, go Blue Devils, but I wanted to talk about the Panacea Incorporation because that's precincts 9 and 10, and as the chair of the Democratic Party here in Wakulla, I've gotten phone calls and emails from citizens who live in that area who are concerned about it. And I've been to the Capitol. I bumped into you at the Capitol. I meet with a lot of legislators, a lot of senators about things that are going on in the state of Florida as a whole, and I can tell you, I go in there as a private citizen. I go in there representing various boards and organizations, including my own employer, but when their aides correspond with me after the fact via email, typically what I get is Madam Chair, whether I go in there as the chair of the Democratic Party or not. So the citizens that I've spoke to, they were concerned because the board did vote 5-0, and they felt that although you went as a private citizen, that as the chair of this county, they wanted you to wait until the deal was done and the minute was already in place before you voted in favor of it. And that's the concern that I've been hearing. No one wants to stop the citizens from Panacea from being able to vote. We all want them to vote. It is in their own best interest to vote and exercise that right. I think the concern is we have the utmost trust in you to make it revenue neutral for the county, but what expense to the citizens of Panacea? And the Democrats that live in that area that have called me directly, that's their concern. They know you will get it to revenue neutral for the county. But what will that do for them as a private citizen with their taxes, utility rates, property tax, whatever the case may be, and why will that decision be made after they vote? And that's the biggest concern. They're asking for more information. They want to go to the polls educated, and they want to make sure they make a best decision for themselves and their own community. They want a city in Panacea, and we should allow them to have that, but they should have the facts before they go to the polls. And that's the area that is probably the most concerning is, are they signing a blank check with their vote? And as you continue to negotiate this, I really want you to consider that. I know you'll make it revenue neutral, but will it cost a small group a lot more than what they're paying today?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Might need some help with this one. Mr. John Tenowitz.
Good evening, Commissioners. I promise I'll be brief. I'm John Tenowitz. I live at 41 Walker Creek Drive in Shell Point. I'm here because Dr. Kessler put the Shell Point boat ramp on the agenda, and I just wanted to address one issue that I have with it. A few months ago, county staff had a meeting at Shell Point, and thank you, Commissioner Moore, for attending, and it was very informative.
I was there, too.
And, thank you also, Commissioner Thomas.
I wasn't there.
Well, good. Well, the two commissioners that were there can indicate that the primary concern that residents of Shell Point have with the current ramp plan is the lighting. There's still some people that are opposed to the ramp initially, the ramp at all, as was I. But, you know, we lost that battle, and so we're ready to move on. And I think that the main concern, at least for the people that are near the ramp, is the planned 8 lights. It's in my backyard. Shell Point is dark, and I love it that way. I like to go out and see the stars at night, and I'm worried that that's going to be taken away. You know, I understand that the need for the lights is driven by potential liability concerns that the county has. I don't think those concerns are warranted. The county is exposed to liability when it put lights in and then those lights fail. Then the county gets sued for failure to maintain the lights. Supreme Court made that real clear in a 2003 decision. What I would like to see is no lights at all at Shell Point. Wakulla County operates currently 8 boat ramps. I drove around and looked at them all. None of them have lights. Please don't put lights in my backyard. What I would ask you to do is ask the county attorney, does the failure to put lights at Shell Point boat ramp expose the county to significant liability concerns? If it does, then I'll be quiet and I won't bother you all about the ramp anymore. I promise you, Commissioner Moore, I won't email you or call you anymore. I'll let it be gone. But I don't think it does. And if it does, you know, maybe y'all need to consider doing something about the current 8 ramps that don't have any lights at all. Thank you.
I totally agree with this gentleman. Do we have to have lights at that ramp? Does the law say, and our insurance carriers say, that we have to have lights?
Risk management, yes, advises that we have.
Now
We're in the process of putting them at we will be putting them in every ramp that we have.
Okay, all right. So all our other properties.
We're actually looking at low-level bollard type lightings. It'll be solar lighting. That'll be less obtrusive.
So there'll be lights at every ramp.
We're going to be putting them at every
and they
ramp.
will be minimal. They will be minimal.
Minimal
That's
lighting.
required by our risk management.
That's right.
Does the grant require lights too, David?
No, the grant does not require that.
And there was also some question about motion-sensitive lights. Is that a possibility, or?
Yeah, that's a possibility as well. But like I say, we're looking at a solar light now. That's about a 3-foot light. That's a small bollard light. The main area we've focused in on is trying to focus more in on is right around the ramp area itself, just for, you know, where people get on and off the boats and right there, and have some lighting there. It probably won't be the 8 that we originally planned. So we have talked to risk management and brought that number
You
down.
are taking the residents' concerns
Yes, most definitely.
into
Most
ca-
definitely.
in other
Most
words.
definitely.
We like to keep it dark.
You know, potential trip and fall things at night. You also need to worry about citizen safety, especially if, as a woman, you don't want women walking around through an unlit parking lot. You're almost inviting problems from my standpoint at that point.
Is this lighting ground-directed lighting?
Yeah, the
Is it gonna be
bollard
like
lighting is a low-level 3-foot lighting.
But is
3 or 4 foot ballard.
does it emit light in all
Out.
directions?
No, it emits light out, not up, out.
Okay, so the
It's
top...
a shade on top of it.
Yeah, yeah. That's where the what you call it, the
Solar cell.
solar cell is.
So
on
there'll
top
be
of it.
no tall lighting out there anymore?
Right,
I
not
think
what we're looking at
originally
now.
So it'd
that
be
was the
kinda like
plan.
Bollard lighting, yeah.
That would help.
A big version of those little spike solar cells you put along paths.
Yeah, it's a larger version of that. In fact, I think the ones we got cast that we're looking at like an 8-foot all the way around, something like that. Just something to give some light there for safety purposes, right around where the ramp, where the docks come in, as well as the ramp, right in that area. We're going to focus there, and then possibly just one at the exit and entry, or 2 at the exit and entries. And that's
Just
it.
a little bit different than that. I've talked to David, and I think we probably all have, about we want minimum light.
Yeah.
And if the law or the insurance company doesn't require it, then we don't do it.
Right, but
Okay.
we're rest assured that was one of the comments that we've gotten, and we're going to be putting them in all of our ramps.
Having said all that, I would actually like to see us have a rule, basically, that going forward, that all lights out exterior off the house or whatever have a down shade, so that I don't see
Some
your...
areas there, some areas there are, like at Shell Point, so you can't reflect it out towards.
Yeah, I know, but we could have I'd like to see a county ordinance basically saying that when you put a light up, that it can't shine in your neighbor's house.
Countywide.
Countywide.
My lights don't shine in my neighbor's house, so I would be opposed to that.
That would be good.
Yeah. Or
But
your
really,
house.
But really and truly, no. David put a light across the bay, and it went right into my bedroom.
Yeah, we did that on purpose.
Yeah, it did. All the way across
It's called
the
a
bay.
spotlight, Jerry.
Yeah, it was. It was. It
He
was.
couldn't sleep for about a week until he called us.
I could shave with the light that he had. But really and truly, I have a lot of people.
We're taking all that into consideration. We'll do the absolute minimum that we
You
have
should
to
be
do.
paying the county for saving your power bill then.
Yeah.
Howard, this was your discussion item, and I know we just went right into it. Would you like to add more to that?
Yeah, well, I understand the concerns of liability with basically a new boat ramp being built and keep the lighting as low to the ground as possible. And I don't know about the 8-foot anyway. I just that's a concern. The other concern is, as I mentioned before, on the ability of navigation to get to a future
Fuel dock.
fuel dock. You know, so I mean, there's concern that's been brought up by residents there, and is anything that's going to be done on this construction restrict the ability to adjust that in the future?
No, we're currently going through zoning, permitting. Talking too much planning and zoning. We're going through permitting now and should have permits within the next couple of weeks. After that, what we're looking at doing, we've talked to the engineers, is we're going to actually shift back one of the docks and make it just a one-load dock, one-side dock, and put the fuel facility on that. Therefore, that alleviates all the concerns of that were brought up. That's the only way you can handle that.
Great. So then the Panacea Corporation, as far as I'm concerned, we've handled that with prior discussion as well. And then, so fracking. That's the last of my discussion items. And so I've asked you before, as a board, why there's no discussion on this. And because I think this is one of the most important issues that's facing not only our country but the world. And I think when we look at ourselves fracking with regard to other countries, we're way behind the regulations. But I provided an article, I think it's from Scientific American. I'm not sure, but I know I had one from that. That is not one of these articles on, you know, pro or con, but basically just providing you the information of what we're doing to our future groundwater, both in using this clean water to frack with and totally polluting it. And then we're injecting this, and when I started doing more reading on this, I learned that not only are we injecting this junk from the fracking into these deep wells, but we've been throwing other hazardous waste into these deep wells thinking that they're contained. And now we're finding out that thousands of them are not contained, and we don't even know where they're leaking to. And the probability is they're going to get into our drinking water. And when we look at California right now, with the drought that it's going under, you know, that's one of the bread baskets of our country. I mean, food production out there, and ag needs that water. And this whole fracking issue just really pushes on our survival. And I just think that I hope you take a look at the article. I sent it electronically, or I had Patty send it electronically, and maybe give it a read. Maybe one of you at some time in the future want to take a speak to it.
Thank you. Anything else? Randy.
Well, I had a bet with Jessica that the meeting will last till 8:35, so I guess I need to talk for about an hour and 5 minutes to win the bet. 2 items. Number one, I was contacted by Skip Young. I don't know if any of you other guys were or not, but he's trying to open a funeral home behind the Centennial Bank in that building that used to be owned by them. And he has bought it and he had thought he'd done his due diligence, but it's zone CO, and when he went to go get his DPA, I guess, there's several things allowed in CO. One of them is miscellaneous services, right, Summer? One of them is medical research, but it doesn't say you can do a funeral home there. Now, it does say you can do a funeral home in C3, I think, right, Heather? C2, okay. So, using that fact that it's in C2 specifically and not specifically in CO, the staff has said you can't do a funeral home here. So, the two options for him are either to rezone it to C2, or we could change the allowable uses in CO to include funeral homes, which would apply to everyone in the future. It wouldn't just apply to him. If the support is here, I'd like to go ahead and direct staff to prepare a modification of the allowed uses in CO to include funeral homes. And if I can get a 5-0 vote, I'll make a motion on it.
Randy, it's my understanding that you can't do that.
Sure you can.
Why?
It has to go through the public hearing process.
But you have to go through the public hearing process.
All this would be doing is direct staff to bring it back as an agenda item. Start the process. You can't do it right now.
Okay,
I support that.
Then I ask you the question. He's ready to go. He's got his ambulance and whatever. Can we have a conditional approval?
Well, let's go over this hump first, and I was going to talk about that next.
I think
Okay.
I think the direction that I feel like that we need to go on this, for one, of course, I support him wanting to establish a business, but I think that the direction we need to go is what you were talking about the changing it to where CO would allow that to happen. That way, it's broad throughout the county, and we're not just spot zoning one piece of property.
It's
I
not
think
spot
the
zoning.
correct
It's
way
a
would
new
be
allowable use.
But I'm in favor of it.
And remember, that one of the allowable uses is miscellaneous services, right, Melissa? That's pretty vague. I mean,
Also a laboratory, and studio,
And
and
if not for the fact that C2 says funeral homes, then I'm sure staff would have allowed him to go ahead and do it. But it says it somewhere else, and there's probably 1,000 different uses that aren't specifically covered in CO.
it even allows
do you need a
cemeteries
second?
in CO.
Do you need
Well,
a
no,
second?
I don't want to make a motion.
No, I'm not on board.
Okay, well, there's no need to make a motion then, because it's not going to pass.
But you can bring it back as an agenda item.
I can bring it back as an agenda item.
Yeah.
If you do bring it back as an agenda item, bring back the fact that he can start forward, and let's just keep don't delay on this. He can go forward conditionally until he can receive the item.
I don't think we
So
can
that we have
guarantee
a
him that.
conditional zoning,
No, I was going to ask you, but I don't think so.
there's no authority in your code to give some, I mean, he can, I guess, disregard his zoning and run that risk on his own, but we don't have the ability, you haven't had any hearings, it requires 3 hearings to change allowable uses.
Even on a conditional basis?
Yeah, we don't have that. There's nothing in your code that allows us
Well,
to give a
This is going to be a drama tomorrow. I will forewarn staff, because it says miscellaneous services, and I think rightfully so, it says, look, what I'm doing falls underneath your definition of miscellaneous services. I can do a Ebola research facility here, but I can't have a funeral home. It's allowed in the CO zoning. So just heads up that...
No, there may be reasons for that, and that's one of the things that I probably want to get my hands around.
Okay.
The thing that comes to my mind is the impact of just a large funeral and what that does with traffic as opposed to a lot of these other things that you said you can
Are
do.
we going to just shut down the county because somebody builds a business?
Well, I understand where he's coming from. I was hoping I'd get a 5-0 vote. It's not going to happen, so I'm not going to beat the...
Well,
no need to beat a
I would
dead horse.
encourage you to bring this back as an agenda item, and I think, like I said, I support his efforts and also what you brought up, but I think we need to address it in a way to where it would be across the board.
Just to reveal my lazy side, can a head nod from 4 of the 5 of us have you bring it back as a staff item?
Yes.
Louis? Louis not listening.
Yeah, well, you said you wanted to bring this back as an ordinance?
Well, I'm saying, would a head nod from at least 4 of us give you justification to bring it back as a staff item?
Well, I mean, if you want Louis to start working on this thing, I think at this time it requires the 5-0 vote. I mean, to give direction to do work on this. If it comes back as yourself as an agenda item at the next meeting,
I'll just bring it back to the agenda.
Yeah, I think it'd be better if we just bring it back to the agenda.
That way it'll probably get done quicker anyway.
I mean, a CO zoning as it stands today will allow a graveyard. So he could,
No. A graveyard is a conditional use within
Right.
a CO, which means you still have to go before the board and get it
exactly,
approved.
but it's allowed. It's an
It is
allowed conditional
A
use.
church is allowed as a conditional use.
So as far as-
But things that are permitted uses that you can go get right now, one of them is miscellaneous services.
Right.
So theoretically, he could go there and open up a porn shop, and he could go get a CO tomorrow and open up for business.
Yeah.
But he can't open a funeral home because it doesn't specifically say funeral home.
There's a standard of construction that a court would employ. The expression of one thing implies the exclusion of another,
That's right.
and that it...
And I understand how they're reaching
I
their
support you
conclusion
bringing it back.
because it says in C2, it is one of the listed allowable uses.
Yeah.
In CO, it is not one of the listed allowable uses, even though it says miscellaneous services. But anyway, I'm not beating that dead horse.
Is there a planning reason why it would only be allowed in C2 and not in multiple zonings, or just an oversight because we haven't crossed this road before?
Well, there's probably hundreds of items that are that we haven't covered.
I mean, I think there is, if you look at the purpose and intent of CO, it is for office use, and it's, generally small-scale offices. A funeral home, you could actually have like a service there, which could have, larger
Miscellaneous
large
services.
number of traffic. Well, and we do have a basis for what is miscellaneous services, and I don't want to go down that path, but there is a definition of miscellaneous services.
What is it? I'd like to hear.
Well, the code...
He's trying to eat up that hour.
We got a whole hour.
The code says that we use the standard industrial classification system, and miscellaneous services includes things like authors, artists, related technical services, record production, scientific and consulting related consulting services, music publishing, actuarial consulting, all other information providers, and environmental consultants.
What's the last allowable use in the list of allowable uses in CO?
The last allowable.
Anyway,
You can hear that process.
it's light industrial. So light industrial is allowed in CO. So, huh? So you could put a sewer lift station on it, right? Infrastructure, light industrial, the elevator place.
It's not light industrial, right? It's
No.
light industrial infrastructure.
Light
Light
infrastructure.
infrastructure.
The
not
elevator place
industrial.
wouldn't be light industrial.
Which is
That's
to allow
industrial.
a lift station or something like that, or...
It's, all right. Heather, you writing this? I think I've just made a mistake. Louis, what was it again? Light industrial infrastructure?
No,
Industrial.
it's
Just
just
light
light
industrial.
infrastructure.
Huh?
No industrial.
All right, what does it say?
Well, it's light infrastructure, and that's defined as, that's to allow things like lift stations, because they're allowed in every zoning district.
Okay. All right, I'm
But
taking
we
up
can
enough
look at
time. You guys, we got another 55 minutes. Go ahead.
Anything else? I have just one item. We've probably all received at least one phone call or email about Hudson Park. And citizens at home, if you haven't noticed, the asphalt has been paved, and it's looking... I'm sorry, Azalea, thank you for the correction. Yeah, no, it has been paved now, and it's looking great, and they're in the process of cleaning it up, and so we'll be
Silt fences will be
reopened
removed.
soon.
On that topic, the asphalt must cure for 2 weeks, and in 2 weeks, the final surface will be put on. That'll be the rubberized surface, and it'll be ready for the prom pictures, and also for our grand opening.
Nice. That's all I have. Jerry?
I don't have it. I'd just like to recognize our representatives here tonight. It's good to have you. I hope I want her to take care of Wakulla.
I would just like to invite everyone to Sop Shopping on Saturday to the annual Worm Glutton Festival. I think that's that and the 4th of July is Sop Shopping's high holy holidays, but I'll say holy, but I mean holidays. But anyway, if I just want to invite everybody to come down to Sop Shopping on Saturday to the Worm Glutton Festival. Thank you.
One more item. There's a young lady that went to school with me and Ralph's daughter, Tori, been struggling with cancer, bone marrow cancer. she passed away on Friday, and just wanted to express our condolences to her family.
Yes.
Thank you.
And also, I just want to, it's a day late, but I wish everyone out there I hope everyone had a happy Easter with their families.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
We are adjourned.
Wow.